live on YouTube. Is thinking about it. The YouTube is thinking about it for a minute. Okay, so. All right, there it is. Okay, we are broadcasting live also on YouTube. All right, I think the technology is ready to go, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you very much, Kathy. Let me go ahead and call this session of the Oregon Aviation Board in order. With that, I'll tell you what, before we get going, we have several of our board members present for the first time. It's nice to meet in person for a change. I was wondering if we could go around and do a quick introduction. I know we have some new staff, which is exciting as well. And then and before we do roll call, Kathy, do we expect Steve to be here? I know he's got to drive in for, and that is always a iffy prospect at best.
He hadn't said he wasn't going to be in person, so.
So my guess is we'll probably see him a little bit later. He's probably stuck to somewhere on I-5 next to the very bridge or something.
Yeah, that never happens.
No. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can do some introductions around the room. Brian, you want to kick us off back there behind the post?
Brandon.
Yeah, Brandon Pike, I'm I'm the new aviation planner. Started last month. There's a board meeting. Nice to meet you all.
Super, thanks, Brandon.
And he comes by the way of City of Salem.
Awesome, thank you, City of Salem.
Yeah.
Good morning, I'm Andrea Abrahamson, and I'm the Great Coordinator of the Department of Aviation. Betty Stansbury, Department of Aviation Director. Good morning, Stacy Postgate, Department of Justice.
Good morning, Twin Beach, State Force Manager with Department of Aviation.
Good morning, Heather Peck, Planning and Programs Manager, Department of Aviation. Good morning, Kathy Clark, Board Administrator and a grant coordinator. Good morning, Colleen Rivera. Aviation and program.
I watched Kathy over there showing you everything. Are you going to be filling in as a board secretary for the immediate time boring, or?
No, but if we need assistance, Colleen and I can take care of that.
Okay, gotcha.
Filling the role that we lost in the pandemic for planning and fiscal. But if, she'd be happy to help out whenever I need it. So
okay.
Since this is Kathy's last meeting and we will miss her immensely, there will be some fill-in, and we are looking for a part-time board administrator.
Okay, super then. All righty, well, I guess it's off the roll call then.
All right, thank you very much, Madam Chair. So on the record, Chair Meeker.
Here.
Catherine Stevens. Here. Kenji Sugahara.
Here.
Tom Kruger.
Here.
And Steve Nagy is not yet.
Stand by.
And then Mike Oliver is, with your permission, excused. He is out of country.
Yes. Okay, super. Well, before we get into the actual meat of the agenda, if I could just ask everybody, especially out there on phone land and internet land, if you could do a second, and if it have anything near you that beeps, squeaks, or whatever, if you could take a second and just mute those devices, everyone would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right, so first up is the consent agenda, which is it's rather light this week. Basically just the minutes from the June board meeting. So board members, you've had opportunity to take a look at those board meetings minutes. Does anyone have anything that you caught that we need to change, or anything that you would like to add to those?
Yeah, I got it muted.
Okay, with that, hearing nothing, I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda as it is.
Motion to approve.
Okay, I have a first motion by Tom. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, we'll give it to Catherine. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing that, the consent agenda has been approved unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, Kathy, back over to you for probably what's the best part of the board meeting, and that's any public comment that we have out there.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. For the record, we do have one letter that was submitted to the board and was sent out in your packet from Dave Inman regarding Pacific City.
Yep.
So you've had a chance to view that, and Dave has also requested to address the board during public testimony today.
Okay,
And he's the only one I have signed up at this time, so I would invite Dave to go ahead and unmute and turn on your camera.
All right, can you see me and hear me?
hey, Dave.
Great. So I'm Dave Inman. I'm representing the Friends of Pacific City State Airport today. I'd like to start by pointing out that the Pacific City Airport signage was recently worked on and that the airport was mowed. I appreciate these efforts by the ODA and thank the board and the ODA for such support. Moving on, in mid-July, we sent a letter to the board at reference today to also Betty Stansbury and Tony Beach. We were addressing 3 projects, some funding issues and communications between the Friends and the ODA. And I wanted to make sure that each of you has read it on the board. And I would also like the board's input or any action that they've taken that will help this airport. And so if possible, I would like the board to supply the Friends with a formal written response to that letter so we know where we stand, because the communication has been lacking and I want that to improve. And that's it up for today.
Okay, thanks, Dave. So we can, if you want to, if Betty and the staff would kind of tee something up, that would be great. And I know right now we're working the SOAR projects, which is, that's the state funding for the state-owned airports. So that project is going under to more of a core-like grant process. So that should help formalize things as we distribute money out amongst our airports. But let me turn it over. Betty, you got any comments you just want to relay back to Dave now versus in the letter later on?
I'll prepare a letter for the board review and signature to respond to Mr. Inman's requests and comments.
Okay. Anything you want to just pass along to him now? Any, Tony?
No.
In my presentation, I'm going to share it here soon. I do have some updates for Pacific City.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you very much. So Dave, I guess we're going to hear a little bit more later on during Tony's presentation. Are you sticking around with us today?
Yeah, I'll stick around for it. Thank you.
Okay, super. Thanks, Dave.
So Madam Chair, that's all the people I had signed up. And if somebody would like to offer public testimony, I would invite them at this time to either do a raise hand. I'm not able to find the meeting on the other YouTube link. I do not wish to testify. Okay, that's from Joanne Linville, Wilson City Councilor. So I'll see if I can get that link sent to Councilor Linville. I don't have any hands up. I think we're good to go, Madam Chair.
Okay, super then. Well, then I guess Betty, since we were talking with you, we'll give you the floor.
Okay, well, good morning, everyone. Some good news to share with the board. We are 7 weeks away from the end of the federal fiscal year, and in the last 3 months, Oregon's airports have received over $44 million in federal funding. There was 23 airports that have gotten funds. Kathy, could you do my presentation up?
Yep, I'm going to share the screen so people online can see it also. And I believe it is.
Next slide.
Over to next screen.
Okay, so I'm just going to talk about the federal funding, about some proposed legislation, some changes in the governor's office, and then some events that are coming up. We've got a pretty active month this month. Could you do the next one, please? So as I said, the fiscal year ends in about 7 weeks, the end of September. And in the past 3 months, Oregon's airports, 23 airports have gotten federal funding totaling $44 million. And that includes pavement preservation projects at 10 airports, 3 master plan updates, 5 lighting and signage upgrades, and then 3 environmental assessments. So Kathy, could you do the next one, please? So the grants for May and June, as you can see here, we got quite a few pavement preservation projects. So Roseburg, Brookings, Astoria, Roseburg and Brookings got pavement projects. Astoria, Baker City are doing master plans. Ben's doing a signage and pavement repair. Hermiston, Joseph, and Lebanon are all doing environmental assessments for projects. Lexington is doing a pavement repair. Salem's going to be doing a master plan update. Ontario's doing pavement repair. Portland's doing pavement repair, and North Bend. So quite a bit of pavement projects that are coming up. Kathy, the next one, please. And then just last month, these were additional grants that were announced. Corvallis is going to be doing some runway lights. Summit Falls is reconstructing their secondary runway. Pendleton is going to reconfigure a runway, and he's separating it. And then John Day and Cresswell are going to be getting some guidance signs. Hood River's going to get some weather equipment. Eugene's going to get another piece of snow removal equipment. Newport is going to get some obstruction marking and lighting. Aurora is going to get some pavement repair, and then a design work for runway rehab. And I don't know what that 100,000 for Florence is. I could not find. I saw announced that they were getting 100,000. I don't know what that is for. So, and what I neglected,
Small airport like that got some money, so.
yeah. I neglected to put add on here is just a few days ago, Salem received a small community air service development grant for $850,000 for revenue guarantees to attract airline service. Okay, Kathy, next one. Okay, so as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, there was some set asides in that for aviation and for airports. And one of the set aside programs is a new program called the Airport Terminal Program. It sets aside $1 billion a year for the next 5 years, and about a little over half of that has to go to large hubs, 15% to medium hub, 20% to small, and then 10% to non-hub and non-primary. So 85 airports got funded under this, almost $1 billion worth, and one Oregon airport, Portland International, was selected, and they're getting about $18.5 million to replace 50-year-old chillers and boilers for the terminal. So, but what I did want to point out for our audience and for our board members, what is not well known about this program is general aviation airports are eligible for this. Under that 10% set aside for non-hub and non-primary airports, GA airports can qualify for terminal repairs and new terminals. And in fact, 11 of these 85 projects that were awarded went to GA terminals. And so, and the notice of funding opportunity for the 23 grant period will be opening up in a few weeks. So this is an opportunity for GA airports that normally wouldn't get terminals funded to be able to do so. Next slide, please, Kathy. Also, as part of the building bipartisan infrastructure law, was a set aside for contract towers for a competitive grant program. 20 million a year for 5 years, so 100 million total. There were 97 applications and 364 million requested, but only 20 million available. So most of the airports that requested, including one of the state-owned airports, were not successful, but one Oregon airport was, and that was Medford, and they're getting a little over $1.5 million for replacement of equipment in their tower. So we did apply for a flight data input output device for the Aurora Tower. We were not selected. We will try again in the next round.
Hey, just because it's so silly that we don't have the flight data device out there in our tower.
Yeah.
How much was that again total that we have to have for
I
to
think
get
it
that?
was it 250,
Okay, so it's a
250,000.
larger chunk.
So
of
not
money.
a huge
Okay.
amount. But again, they had so many applications, and and really not a lot. $20 million doesn't buy a lot. And so, but we're pleased that Medford was, at least one Oregon airport was selected, and we will attempt again for Aurora in the next round.
Okay, thanks.
And then if we are unsuccessful, we believe there may be some federal funding through facilities, airways and facilities funding
Oh, okay.
for it in 24 or 25. We just were hoping not to have to wait until then to get the device. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, and then next one, please. Okay, so again, a little over 44 million, almost 45 million, that came to Oregon airports in the last 3 months. What I want to talk to you just briefly about is some new legislation that has not yet been passed both houses yet, but it passed the Senate a couple of days ago. It's going to the House on Friday. It's called the Inflation Reduction Act, and it has an aviation piece in it. And so there's 300 billion in this bill, but it's about climate change and clean energy and prescription prices and a bunch of things, but it's also got something in there about sustainable aviation fuel. And it includes 5 years worth of tax credits for companies to produce, distribute, and store sustainable aviation fuels. So, and it gives 297 million to FAA to provide grants to state and local governments, to airports, airlines, nonprofits, to support sustainable aviation fuel and low emission aviation technology projects. And so again, this is a proposal, but we think in a few days it'll become a law. And so 244 million of that is related to production, transportation, blending and storage of SAFs. And then there's about 46 million in there for low emission technology.
Good, thank you.
So quick question for you. Does the SAS also include electrification projects, especially around?
To my understanding, it does not. It is just on sustainable fuels. It does not. I will double check and get back to you, but my understanding is it's not about electrification, it's just SAS.
Okay, because that could be a very potentially something very promising for a lot of the airports around, especially for short hop
Yes,
as we electrify it.
Because currently there's not even tax incentives, even if for individuals anywhere in the electrification on aircraft, is there? It's totally bypassed the aviation industry. Okay.
Madam Chair, if I may, just for a moment for the record and for folks who are watching, I'm happy to welcome Steve Nagy to the meeting. So want to acknowledge for the recording.
Gotta look traffic. No problem.
okay,
Okay,
so again, it's passed the Senate, it's going to the House, we think this week, and the president is indicating he will sign it if it gets to him. The match on it is between 75 and 90% federal and 25 or 10% for local. Again, airports, not just airlines, but airports are also, and state and local governments are eligible, will be eligible for this program. Okay, and then there's one other that I wanted to mention to you that I'm just a little bit excited about. So the federal fiscal year ends the end of September. The budget for federal fiscal 23 has not yet been passed. So the Senate Appropriations Committee met last week and the week before and presented their proposed budget, including for FAA and for the AIP program. And in it has about 3.35 billion for AIP. And that includes 517 million in discretionary supplemental. Some of that is already earmarked, about 117 million of that is already earmarked for directed projects, but another 400 million in discretionary, 188 million in the contract tower program, 10 million in the small community research development program, which are numbers about what they are at right now. But for the first time ever, there is a provision in there that airports can get grants for resiliency for infrastructure projects. So,
sorry, can you repeat that?
so the first time
Yep,
ever.
yep.
This language, if it gets passed, will allow for resiliency.
Resilience,
related
okay.
infrastructure projects at airports. Right now, it's only at commercial service airports, but at least that's a start. And they define, it, natural disaster to be, earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricane tornadoes. They also include winter storms and tornadoes. And so, that's a pretty big group. And when you only have 400 million, that doesn't buy a lot. But interestingly enough, they did not include wildland fires in here. So that's the next thing we will need to work on, is try to get wildfire resiliency included in there, but it's a good start for our 6 commercial service airports, that this would be, resiliency projects would be AIP eligible. So again, this is just what the Appropriations Committee has proposed. It still needs to go through both House and Senate. So it's got a ways to go, but I wanted to share that with you because this is a step in the right direction in our opinion. Okay, any questions about anything so far? Okay, so just a couple of information items for you. Some of you may recognize the name Matt Garrett. He will be our policy advisor starting next Monday. Amira Streeter is leaving the governor's office. She's been our policy advisor now for about 6 months or so. And she's leaving the governor's office, so Matt's gonna be the interim until the new governor selects her permanent policy advisor. So, some of you may know Matt. If you don't, he was the head of ODOT for, 15 years, 14 years, until 2019. And since then, he headed up the governor's task force on the Labor Day, 2020 Labor Day fires recovery. And then more recently, he was involved in managing the state's efforts related to the World Track and Field Oregon 22 event last month down at Eugene.
I would like your thoughts about how long to go, once he'll come in. We should probably try to get on his schedule for a quick howdy phone call.
I've already
Maybe,
requested a meeting with him.
okay.
So, I've heard very good things about him.
He's been, but the fact that he navigated ODOT for 20+ years, multiple governors. So he's the perennial, good staffer and gets things done and can work with just about anybody. And more importantly, for a change, we have not for a change. We have someone who is well immersed in transportation versus,
Sure.
so that's a welcome.
Sure.
Addition, addition to the governor's office.
So this will be at least 6 months until the new governor appoints for.
And hopefully they'll stay on. He's, like I said, he's very well versed in transportation and governmental affairs, so never can tell.
Never can tell. And then also the state's chief operating officer, who is also the director of the Department of Administrative Services, Katie Kova, is retiring next month and will be replaced by Barry Leslie, who is the assistant chief of staff. The governor will be the acting director.
Yeah,
and
big
act-
shoes to fill with Katie
COO.
Kova. Big shoes.
Okay, and then I want to end with some great events this month for aviation. We have 2 air shows. The one at McMinnville is August 19th through the 21st. That's the second of the 2 shows that the Oregon International Air Show puts on. And then the Madras Air Show of the Cascades is the 26th and 27th. And then one more, Kathy, for Salem, both the B-17 and the B-25 will be here the 23rd through the 28th. Salem has hosted the B-17 before and is restoring B-17 here on the field. But this is an opportunity for people to see a little bit of history. So 3 great shows this month if you have an interest in. And that concludes my remarks.
Okay, super.
Questions?
Questions? Any board members? All right, thanks for the update and good to hear about the changes of, one, getting more money and 2, some additional person people in the governor's office. That's awesome. All right, so I think now, correct me if I'm not the royal Kathy, but I think we're gonna hear about some energy siting projects. Is that correct? Are we talking about kind of windmills and things that have a tendency to interfere with airplanes flying around airports?
Yes, and our partnership with the Department of Energy, we work really closely with them on all of those projects, and Brandon will be stepping into that role. Seth is still working for us part-time, and helping me train Brandon through this, especially. There are a lot of those energy projects, and we need to know ahead of time. And Casey is on. So if there you are, hi. Unmute, there we go. And do you want? Actually, I'll let you start and you can run the show.
All right, I'll just make sure I can get my screen up here.
Stand by if you need it.
All right, is that first slide coming up?
Perfect.
Wonderful. Chair, members of the board, for the record, my name is Casey Radcliffe, and I'm a project manager at the Oregon Department of Energy. I also want to note that some of my project team members couldn't be here today, but one of our siting analysts, Wally Adams, and our military liaison, Kimberly Peacher, may join later in the presentation and have been really integral in our project work. So I really want to thank you for the opportunity to present today. I'm going to provide you an overview of our project. This is a multi-year grant focusing on opportunities and constraints around increasing renewable energy in our state. We know that development is continuing and that the development of energy resources requires balancing many issues related to military and aviation operations, land use, economic and community development, natural resources, community needs, and this crosses all sorts of processes and jurisdictions at federal, tribal, state, and local government. So a question that we've been getting at our agency is, we've heard there's a need for more renewable energy in the state, but where is it going to go and how much? So this is a huge question. Our agency is really interested in it, but we knew that there was a part of this that we needed to start talking about and working on together. Really here, we're focused on getting robust data and information across topics, across sectors and jurisdictions to provide educational resources and tools to the community. We've had interest from policymakers, developers, government entities, regulatory entities, and knowing that we needed to have a common understanding of these issues and a central place of data to actually have the type of coordination and notification conversations that have become so important. This is part of over a $1 million grant that's funded through the U.S. Department of Defense. It closed in June, so we're just closing out. So I was really excited to get to talk to you today and talk about our final materials. We're also going to be maintaining our primary project resources and tools, including the mapping tool that I'll give you a preview of today. I wanted to thank our team. We worked with Department of Land Conservation and Development and the Institute of Natural Resources, which is housed at Oregon State University, including our liaisons with the Oregon Military Department and US Navy. We've worked across sectors, jurisdictions, gained input from industry and subject matter experts. And I have to pause here also to thank our sister agency at Department of Aviation, who has hung in there for the last couple of years with us as we've developed this project. This included Betty, Tony, Heather, and Seth, who reviewed our emails, our project details, provided us feedback and contacts, and attended one of our focus groups in developing the project. So our goal with partnering with Department of Defense was to support military compatibility through coordination and early notification, really in the pre-planning and early stages of project concept and design. We wanted to raise awareness about military needs, airspace in Oregon and operations, and also look at discussion support and educational tools. I want to note that this is the tool and the resources from this project are totally voluntary. They don't substitute or replace any of the current regulation or permitting work happening at the state, but is really meant to provide education and information so those processes are more transparent and easy to follow. I'll also say that while the military brought us this need and use case for coordination and early notification, throughout the last couple of years, this has become a major theme for many others. We heard from cultural resource tribes, local governments who are new and reviewing renewable energy projects in their jurisdictions, all wanted more coordination across government and industry. While notification in some places for your agency, other state agencies, the military are required in some locations, it's not mandatory or required across the entire state of Oregon. And this is a high need. We want to know about projects early. We want to have discussions about the impacts and the opportunities of renewable energy, and really using stakeholder input on the state of play in Oregon to help us understand where do we go from here. So really arming us with the information and data now so we can have those more informed and transparent and central conversations. So this is in the project materials in your packet. So I'm not going to go through all the detail here. But what I do want to let you know is part of our project method was that on the left here, you'll see that there were 3 topic-based assessments. These were led by consultants with expertise in the field. This included renewable energy, so scenario planning to help us know what does that future of energy look like. Also talking to industry in the development community. We did a deep dive with the military on military operations, needs, and scenarios where renewable energy and interactions with the military can and do occur. And then what I call the kitchen sink, which was our natural resource, environment, and development assessment, which really looked at across topics and sectors, what are the opportunities and constraints in the landscape today. I want to note that that included more than 400 stakeholders, 80 surveys. We hosted a half dozen regional webinars and talked to almost 200 attendees in the 3 assessments. We also, in this process of these assessments, collected more than 600 spatial data sets, reviewed almost 500, and there are more than 250 in our tool. So while this project has taken a while, I think it is very robust and comprehensive, using the assessments as a way to gather information and data, and then non-spatial data about what's going on in Oregon. We also provided a siting procedures review, which I would really recommend for reviewing any of the siting regulations, permitting, and project review processes that apply in Oregon. Our siting analysts helped us develop these really amazing flow charts and visuals to help you really follow the process and the design that happens in permitting and siting. So that's really clear. And then identifying where early conversation and coordination could really benefit in those processes. And then what I'm going to talk about today are our final deliverables, which is a report which we provided as a somewhat short summary of all the work that we've accomplished, major findings, and then an interactive online tool that allows users to explore data and ask these questions and have more informed conversations. So the report has a few sections. We've discussed our project activities and methodologies, a few of which I shared today. But I also want to share that we have some best practices about data collection. For any of you that have to wrangle with data and GIS, that's a very complex and evolving topic. So we have some lessons learned from that effort, where data is available, where data gaps exist, and where there's opportunities to do more central data work in the future. We also go through our key findings from those 3 assessments I mentioned. I think this is especially helpful when you're trying to understand a sector or topic you're not familiar with or you don't get to work with every day. We really asked for those assessments to give us insight and understanding of what's going on with other stakeholders and the concerns and issues they have. And then our last section is lessons learned around perspective issues and topics. There's a reason that this project hadn't been done before. It's complex. There's a lot of people who have needs and interests around the development of renewable energy, and also just talking about infrastructure more broadly related to our climate and energy goals and what communities are needing. So we bring and lift up a synthesis of what we heard from the community. And then all of the materials that we worked on, including those assessments, those process diagrams, are included in the appendix. So a really large amount of supplemental material to help you become an energy expert and understand renewable energy as much as you need and have interest for these conversations. I also want to just lift up one of key takeaways from the report. And in the assessment, we did find that there is enough renewable energy potential in Oregon to meet our goals. There are definitely trade-offs, impacts, and benefits of development, and those have to be carefully considered through responsible processes and a lot of stakeholder communication and coordination. So there are challenges. We know that transmission, community development, interest and cost, permitting criteria, those all make this issue complex, but we were able to answer the big question of, can we develop enough renewable energy in the state to meet our goals without having to make major sacrifices or major impacts in the community? And we do see pathways there. So I think that's a really important takeaway and helps us recommit to talking about renewable energy as a pathway to a more sustainable future, while knowing that we do have room and space to consider a lot of the other constraints and opportunities and considerations of all of the inner workings of how Oregon is developed and managed. So I want to spend the rest of my time going through a demo. I'll use screenshots just for kind of ease of view. They're also included in the slides. You don't have to look in the minute detail from these slides. They're really meant to illustrate some of the features and functions of the tool. I'll mention that we have a really robust set of data and queries that talk across military, energy, natural resources, transportation infrastructure. You can interact and browse all those spatial data. And what I explained the other day was it's like building your own sandwich. You can add those layers the way that you need and in the way that you view the energy landscape. And then we also have a automated report function that allows you to develop a site level report. So if you have a place that you're interested in, that you're having community conversations around, or you just kind of want to know what's out there, this automated report allows you to take a subset of important data and it generates this PDF report for you. So trying to make that as easy and user-friendly as possible. So I'll put the link to the tool in the chat. It is housed in Oregon Explorer, which is one of our primary clearinghouses and portals for data in Oregon. It also helps us allow for data consistency. This is used by other agencies, other public entities. So we're really excited to have a partnership, and that's going to be a long-term partnership with Oregon Explorer to maintain the tool, make sure that data stays accurate and fresh. So when you come into the tool, you have three options. I like to talk about these as the pillars of our work. Exploring data is that library of data sets that you can view and build on your own. Get a report is that automated reporting function that you can look at for site level exploration. And then the learn section is where we're housing all of the additional information that gives you the context and information to not only use the tool appropriately, but have larger conversations around this topic. So we'll start with the explore section. So I mentioned, there's more than 250 data sets here. You can also upload your own data. So we did have users explain that they have some either private or proprietary or draft data that they may not want to be ready to share, may not be public. So you can actually embed that data here just for your own personal use that doesn't get uploaded to any server. So you can include that, and then you can look through all of the data that we have available and build those layers as you have interest. So our first, what I like to call theme, is military. We do have military training areas, which include training routes and center lines, training route floor elevations, special use airspace, and those floor elevations as well. We also have some of the facilities, areas of concern, and this is a preset layer that automatically you can develop to see all of the military data sets, and this has been cleared with our military liaisons. This is also elaborated in our military assessment, and so if there's any information on the spatial data or the non-spatial elements of military use and operations, we have a full assessment to cover those conversations. Our next theme is energy. Here we have infrastructure, including transmission lines, facilities, other renewable energy types and potential. I'll also note that you can see these small arrows on the right. Clicking these allows you to actually learn about what the data layer is, where the source is, how you can download the data if it is publicly available, and also adjust some of the visualizations. So we've not only provided some of the Oregon facilities and ODO data sets here, but brought forward some of the transmission and substation data that people are needing to understand the infrastructure of energy in Oregon. Our next theme is natural resources. So here we have quite a lot of species and habitat data, conservation opportunity areas, and even land characteristics like slope, hazards, farmland, watershed. We have bird areas, visual resource management areas, air quality and non-attainment areas. So we've tried to really house quite a comprehensive data set here. This is based on feedback from agencies, non-governmental organizations on what are the commonly and authoritative data sets related to natural resources. We've also included what we call a community considerations layer. I'll just note that this is still evolving. There's some really good conversations happening right now around what are the type of indicators or metrics that help us understand either constraints or opportunities in communities, not only for renewable energy development, but also just development at large and where community needs and improvements are possible. We have some of the standard formal designations like enterprise zones, housing and community data. And then we brought over a large amount of data sets from the US EPA. They have the EJ Screen tool, which is a pretty comprehensive data set around indicators on communities, whether it's race and demographics, income, education, housing needs. So this is kind of a nice central point to really understand the profile of communities and what their needs might be. I also put together this special slide for this group. I wanted to just mention this is how you kind of can build your own layers. So here I've included some of our other topic specific layers. We have historic places, administrative boundaries, land cover, and ownership. We've also added some transportation features. We have unmanned aircraft system restrictions, data sets in there, weather station. So in this example, I just was kind of building this based on what I thought might be interesting. So I added the county layers. So you can see the counties in gray. The yellow diamonds are airports, which comes from the US ODOT or the US Department of Transportation and FAA data set. I've included coastal and principal ports, which are the stars and the circles that you see on the borders of Oregon. There's the UAS national restrictions, FAA facility map, which are the kind of hard to see, but the teal polygons. We also have airspace class and weather radar stations, which are the blue circles. So this is just a way that you can add and then explore data that's available in the tool. So the metadata for each of these layers is provided. We talk about who the data holder is and what the data source and the date is to really help people understand what the data is, how to use it, and then links on where they can go see more information from that data holder on what the data set is, how to get the data themselves, and also where and how to use that. So this is kind of one that I just created quickly as an example of how you can turn those layers on and off. So moving from the explore section, I'll give you a preview of what it's like to go through the automated reporting part of the tool. So here I just put in a test site. You can choose the type of development you want along with the development options. These are really for your use. They don't really constrain or limit your exploration of the tool, but it does help us know which data layers to present in the report when you're generating that. I'll also note, just like before with the upload, this is only available to you. And so it's not shared with anyone on the project team. It's not shared with any state agencies. And that was really important in the development community, and also to allow people to use this as a creative and collaborative space. So in this example, I drew a polygon. You can also upload a layer. You can also buffer that section if you have a larger extent that you're interested in. It then does this dynamic report. There's a PDF report option available that you can export. And then there's this dynamic, which I call, live report in the tool that allows you to interact with the data from the report. You'll see these 6 categories are very similar to the ones I covered in the Explore section. And I'll just quickly go through examples of how they show up in the report. So first is site information. You can see administrative boundaries, intersections with districts, zoning, also the percentage of ownership. So in this example, you can see that this is 91% owned by state government, and then the next is federal government with a small amount of private. I can actually pin and use the eye icon here to turn those visuals on and off. So I can actually toggle them on and off to understand that data better. And then I also have a call out for cultural resources. That information is not included in the tool, but we do have links for the appropriate authorities there and how this topic intersects with the conversation of renewable energy. Coming back to military, you'll notice this notification icon has shown up in my report. This is letting me know that my site has intersected with a data layer. I can see which data layers are here, including the military training routes and special use airspace, and I can actually initiate contact. And this will help me send an automated report to the military liaison in this area to let them know that I've found an intersection and I'd like to initiate early conversations, pre-planning or coordination to learn more about this site, more about these data layers. So this is one of our primary goals in the tool. We've had other jurisdictions and parties interested in a similar feature, so it's something we'll continue to talk about. But I'll note that, we really talk about here that an intersection is just that. It shows you presence or absence of the tool, but it doesn't confer that the project is or is not developable. And this is true for all the data sets. And we message that quite a lot in the report and the Learn section of our tool to help people understand how to use this tool appropriately. This is about providing the presence of information to highlight that there may be a conversation or an entity that you need to talk to, but we do not use this to say that a project can or cannot be developed. What we found in this conversation is that is a complex conversation. It's very site and applicant dependent, and a site-by-site analysis needs to be done, but this will at least bring information to the top for those early conversations. In the energy category, we include some of those infrastructure items. So I have distance to substations, distance to transmission lines, and also can turn the capacity or potential that lets me know how high the potential is for development of certain renewable energy types. In this or any of the data sets, there's these little eye icons, which are these information tooltips that allow you to open that to learn more about the information. And this is basically the equivalent of what I showed you in the Explore section, which allows you to open and learn more about that data before you move on to your next theme or layer, the report. For natural resources, we show all the intersections and queries for protected areas, species, habitat, and farmland. Again, that eye icon allows you to turn those on and off so you can see where and how much of these intersections are occurring. And again, this is an example of allowing you to scan the landscape and see what's around you, what may be adjacent or intersecting with your site, and then what that information is and the authority or the data holder of that data. We have those community considerations, and I'll also note here that because this is an ongoing conversation, we've included a lot of additional resources that aren't probably ready for spatial display, but are really important considerations. So we have equity and environmental justice resources, and then a suite of information related to state agencies and federal government support for community information. So as I mentioned, that was kind of the live dynamic part of the report. All of this is then expressed in a single PDF, combined PDF. So here you can get site level maps, which basically display the mapping view that we saw earlier. You have links to actually get the GIS service to bring those data layers into your own tools and the metadata. You can also download data that's publicly available. And then all of the contact information for your site, but also broadly. And this was something we heard a lot, is that sometimes you might hear of a piece of data or information that you need to follow up on, but you don't know who to talk to. So we've tried to provide a comprehensive state list of state, federal, and local contacts. And we're going to continue to try to refresh this as much as possible to, again, support that ability to have those early conversations and get a hold of the right folks. So I think overall, across our sectors, our hundreds of participants, we confirmed that this type of tool was necessary and unique. Reporting and early conversations to understand what's going on at a site are really needed. And to have these conversations, we have to really focus on the overall needs and benefits of communities. And there's a lot to that, but having central and transparent information is really key to make those conversations happen. So there's some key deliverables that I shared, including the online report, the PDF of our report and the tool are available, all of the supporting materials. And then also I'll drop in the chat after I close out our project website, which includes the links to all of this, and then our renewable energy landing page, which is focuses on our tool, but also broader information and resources around renewable energy. We're still looking to cultivate resources, articles, and stories. So if you have any materials or questions that we can support and provide information in this landing page, we would love to continue to do that. We're also looking for other venues and participants that we should be providing a demo of this tool and making sure that they have awareness of the project, the resources, and anywhere where we can improve data accuracy and getting that education and outreach material out to communities so they can have these conversations. So with your packet, I've included those links, and you can send us comments, questions, sign up for email invitations. But overall, I just want to close saying that, our goal was to baseline data and information in the state, create a interdisciplinary and multi-jurisdictional place and data set that allows people to have trusted and accurate information and supports development in a responsible way. We know that we have continued conversations and that this project built new relationships across our project team, working with state agencies, working with industry and tribes, community members. And we think in the end, we have a really thorough assessment of renewable energy in Oregon, a new resource for you to use and explore. And we would really invite you to take a look at our online tool, get to know our material a little better, and then reach out if you have questions or you would like more support. So with that, I'll stop. And I know I went through things really quickly, so I'm happy to go back and look at some of those screenshots. I can pull up the live tool if you have a data set that you'd be interested in. So anything that piques your interest or that I can provide more information on. Thank you.
No, thank you, Casey, for a very, that was a very detailed brief. Thank you very much. Any questions from any board members?
And then one thing is just make sure you project really loud to the owl so people online can hear you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. It was great. I'm wondering if you're doing outreach to cities across the state, because I do think that would be a useful tool. I know we've been kind of making our own tool, for the city of Eugene, but this seems much more comprehensive and it would probably be very useful.
Yeah, thanks for the question. We have done some outreach to cities. We did work through the League of Oregon Cities and did some outreach as well. And then we did ask for any cities that had particular renewable energy projects or siting discussions going on. But I would love, Eugene included, if there were any particular cities that we could do some outreach with. We work with them on other energy topics, so I would be thrilled to get to talk with them more and share this tool, whether it's to share data to make your own tool better, or if there's a way that our tool can be centralized and support your needs so you don't have to stand up and maintain your own tool. We would love to be in those conversations, and our data team is ready to help with that as well.
Thank you. Angie.
All right, so I gotta say, this is a fun tool. While you were talking, I was actually playing with it in the background, going through all the tool sets. And I was wondering if you considered possibly getting ADS-B data in there in terms of creating some heat maps as well to figure out if there's any favored routes that might, where siting of energy infrastructure might impact that aviation. So I don't know where it's available or how, because I know it comes at a cost to get some of that data, but it might be an interesting layer to throw in terms of planning as well.
Thank you for the recommendation. Could you say again what the data set was?
ADS-B, which is with the transponder data that the aircraft put out, and it's
FAA?
tracked a lot.
FAA hold that. Who holds that? It's not a
It's a
company
private
priority,
company.
is it? Is it a company priority?
Yeah.
Thank you for the recommendation. I vaguely recall a conversation during a focus group about this, and I will look up. I think if we don't have a direct link, I think we did have a conversation, and I'll definitely pass that along to our mapping team for consideration. Yeah, any kind of data sets that are timely and could be used as that overlay, we would be definitely interested in including. So thank you.
I think that we brought it up in the beginning and wanted to wait until the final deliverable was done to see if there was other additional aviation components that we could add at a later date that might have also included an UAS or anything that was on the horizon, UAV and mobility, just anything that could that data.
And along those lines, when you consider the energy infrastructure siting, are you mostly considering large infrastructure such as wind turbines, or I saw the subsea, some of those wave type of technologies involved as well. But are you focusing in on the large ones, which have a larger impact on whether it be the environment or transport issues? Or are you also talking about sort of the smaller scale, like you see in a lot of fields with the solar installations, not the huge ones that you see out toward Hefner or Ione?
Great, yeah, great question. Thank you. And for the non-spatial information, so the assessments, the narrative, the conversations, in our scenario for the renewable energy scenario model, we had them kind of say, in 15 years, what are the possible renewable energy pathways? Not picking one or predicting the future, but just what's possible. And we did actually include a distributed energy resource model that shows the potential of doing those smaller scale distributed and small scale renewable energy types. So that scenario is in the assessment. If you open that assessment, you can go down to that scenario. They'll talk about what the total potential and capacity for that is. It is possible. There is a scenario for that. And that would likely, in reality, be used in combination with utility scale. When we looked at the data layers in the mapping tool, many of the available data layers that developers use are based on considering utility scale projects. So we talked to developers working at the utility scale, and those data sets are referenced, but it wasn't exclusive to only that. And so based on community conversations, actually what we heard from coastal communities that are interested in resiliency and improving energy infrastructure in their community, small communities that are looking for connection to a more reliable energy system, We actually included some data layers. So that's like distance to substation. Some of the community consideration layers, when you open it, will actually show energy possible and energy burdened communities. So we definitely didn't limit the scope. When you do that site level assessment, you can do a very small area. You know, I tried doing one just for practice that was only 5 acres. I still got a lot of data information from a very small site. It doesn't have to be a giant utility scale site for our reporting function to work. Now, I think there's a follow-up to this, which is the bigger question, which our project can inform but doesn't answer, which is, you know, what strategies or impacts would you have of if your community decides to do small scale, non-utility versus utility scale. That's like a bigger conversation on how we build the portfolio of energy, but our tool definitely didn't exclude smaller site considerations.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
No questions. I would just build upon upon your comment about rolling this out to cities, counties, other special districts, and getting this tool to be used, because everyone is moving into this area, and to have a uniform tool to making decisions and making analysis and assessments on would be certainly beneficial. I will certainly be taking this back to our planners. Yeah, the more that this can be done, rolled out statewide, the better.
Okay, fantastic. All right, well, thank you, Casey. You got a lot of good conversation going, and I think we'll keep moving along here, but thank you very much for showing up, and we appreciate the brief.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the board, and please get a hold of us if you need anything. And thank you again to our agency staff and partners for the opportunity today.
All right, thanks, Casey. Appreciate it. Okay, Heather, I think staying kind of with the planning and programming of the day, I think it's over to you. Is that correct?
It is, it is. And when we meet with the local municipalities, the cities and the counties that we work with. We'll go ahead and bring it up too, and we'll put a link on the website as well. Because we talk about tall structures, we talk about the nexus between land use and our comments from most things related. And then this is just one more tool for the toolbox of all things planning. I'm gonna go ahead and I need to. Don't think people are. It's pretty fabulous. It would be great if we could just use that as a base and add stuff like streetcar mark on top of it and just all sorts of, right. All of the things that really affect our agency and all of the airports in the city. And maybe that's an agency partnership that we can find funding for at a later time and see how we can add on to it. Hey, your show is on there. All right. You can just watch the next one. Okay, so I'll just go over things pretty quickly. Aviation land use coordination and program management. The totals have changed a bit. We've done roughly 100 more since we've talked last. Both land use reviews and tall tower evaluations. It's always a challenge to make sure the crane operators are notifying us. In fact, yesterday I found out that a large crane operator doing a big project in Corvallis had not notified us, and it happens to be right at the and on approach. So we'll have to get with them and notify the city and let them know that it could be a hazard to the airport. So those are all of the things that Brandon is learning with myself and Seth, who's still on board temporarily.
as we walk through this. John Wilson has also been providing support services for NOTAMs and crane operators so that we don't lose the bubble on any of that. And still wind facilities and solar facilities stand at 6 and 8 so far. Next slide, please. A little admin, financial transactions, leasing 68. We've collected 37,750 in revenue. 230 invoices have been paid. This is just the minutia that is everyday work that takes a lot. And total amount dispersed 521,000. 613 total aircraft renewals have been completed, and we've received $55,220. These monies go into our pot for our matching funds for GA projects, just so that you're aware. Lisa has been promoted to the agency accounting tech and fiscal assistant. She was the registration specialist, and that happened August 1st. So congrats to her. And she's been doing that job since Roger retired, and she's been doing a fabulous job. Accounts and past due collections, we have a temp in that position, and she's doing amazing and has collected 253 past due accounts recently, and sent 62 to DOR for collection. All of these things matter and count and help us be the agency that we are, fund the projects that we need to fund. Next slide. Oh, sorry. Just a little overview. We did complete our annual physical inventory at the end of June. Our Q4 accounts receivable reports will be due August 1st, and Andrea is training Lisa on a lot of the fiscal pieces that she'll be now providing service for. The statewide procurement project implementation wave 2, which is Oregon Buys, is starting this month. It was pushed back from June, and it will integrate accounts payable into the system. This still will be a heavy lift for our small agency, and Holly will be assisting in this workload. So welcome, Holly, for this procurement assistance that we so desperately need. Planning division and recruitments update. We just talked about it a little bit. The only open recruitment that is happening right now is for the grants coordinator position that Kathy also wears the hat for. So that should close the end of next week, and we hope to bring somebody on sometime in September.
Any issue, I guess they're just gonna kind of train by fire, because that'll be just 1 month before the grants
Yes.
process actually opens up, huh?
Yeah, so Andrea and I will be busy, just like Naomi and I were on kickoff before Matt Lawyer started. So I'll be putting that hat back on for a little while, and then we'll train Holly so she can backfill in those spots too. The nice thing about a small agency is that everybody does want to learn and help out. So it's great, but it's also a little bit of extra work for everybody too. But I'll be putting in the time. Speaking of core, we're finalizing grants from the approved grant cycle. The FAA has not released all of their grants yet. I'm not sure where we are percentage wise.
On
you
the-
know?
Yeah, on the 22s. So on the 22 cycle, we are about half either executed or in process. The other half, most of them that haven't executed their grants yet, it's one of two things. They haven't gotten their AIP grant from the FAA, or they're getting new engineering estimates because of the increase of cost of labor or the lack of the ability to procure the equipment such as generators and so forth that they want the grant for, so they're not sure they can go forward with the grant. So what we are doing is we're working very closely with all of the grant awardees and touching base with all of them. Where are they at? What are their hangups? And we believe some of them will cancel the 22 and reapply in 23 with their new estimates for cost or their different grant levels, because their AIP grants may turn out to be 23s anyway. So that would be a more appropriate place for that to go. So those are all under discussion, and we're working very closely with all of the airport sponsors.
And
Have a
I
date-
I
You kind
only
of have a
antici-
date in mind about when a grantee that's out there needs to come to you on whether they're going to be able to make the project go, or whether they're going to have to scrap the project and reapply in 2023 cycle.
No, it really depends on the project and actually what's going on with the approvals with the FAA piece and the scope.
Okay.
If we can fit it into their original scope, because the money is set and we're not amending any of the monies, then we will do that. It's just we have to amend the scope of work to reflect accurately if the AIP grant changes too. So I don't really expect that to be happening with a lot. I'm thinking maybe a couple, only
Oh,
two
okay.
at most. And then the third bucket, we're reviewing scopes and also working really closely with those airports because, you know, from inflation to the cost of services and everything else, they're having issues as well. But we suspect they'll all move forward with some slight scope modifications. And obviously it doesn't change approvals that the board gave financially. So it's just been challenging.
Well, hopefully, you know, if we can try to bend over as much as backwards as possible. Because having them cancel and reapply, it just adds more burden onto them when they have a project that the board has already approved.
Absolutely.
So I feel for them out there, you know, the inflation and just the ability to get things is difficult. So if we can at all give them a little bit of leeway in these tough times, that'd be appreciated.
We are, and we are, you know, following the statute and rule and making sure that, we're following that to a T to be able to make those projects fit.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
if
know a lot
not-
of them have FAA ties too, so we gotta do what we gotta do. I appreciate it.
And any that we need to bring back to the board, we'll definitely do so. And I will have another update, in October
Okay.
for the board on that.
Super.
Are any contemplating scope reductions in order to stay inside the budget? You know, scope changes?
So that's not the yes and no. The most interesting piece is, you know, their money doesn't go as far. The cap for our grants is 150,000. So that's really easy to get to. It's just making sure that the scope is adequately defined so that if they do have to come back for another grant, that work wasn't included in this
Right.
grant so that it doesn't look like we're paying them twice for another project, right? So that's an audit issue and make sure that we can definitely do that. So we are really getting into the fine details on all the projects to make sure.
Okay.
And then we'll talk a little bit about some ways to maybe fix that in the upcoming cycle and present to the board. Andrea and I will. We're also working on a brand new environmental assessment project. We have been required by the Oregon Department of Agriculture to do a study in EA and BA for marbled murrelets at all of our state-owned airports. This only applies to state agencies, property, so not any local municipalities, so lucky us. It's gonna cost approximately $25,000. And it will be for all of our coastal airports. Right now, that's the scope.
And speaking of coastal airport.
That was my question, because it would be silly to do it at all of the state-owned airports when they're
Right.
coastal.
Yes, absolutely. So, and we have to get a very specific a data set back to the Department of Agriculture that they're looking for on this. And no, it did not come with any funding. So we'll be paying that out of ops.
Was that a state statute or was that a administrative rule?
I believe it's both for this, and it came up last session. But I can get back to you.
Yeah,
We've not had to do this in the
Right.
past, so I'm not sure what triggered it exactly, and it could have been new rulemaking on their part.
so I would definitely look at that trigger, because if it's not legislated, you can push back.
It was defined by the legislature.
Okay.
So that much I do know. I just don't know where and which rule. it was defined. So, so we're getting there. We're also working on many RFPs for engineering and planning that are underway in our group for new scopes for publication early this fall. Those will be for 5-year agreement to agrees for our airports and how we do all of our work with FAA and then state projects. Next slide. Oh, yeah,
That one's it, okay.
is that it? No, the next one. Okay. And you met our new staff. Brandon comes from the city of Salem, and Holly, who's doing everything, comes to us from the Department of Revenue, right?
Yeah.
So we're very happy to have them. Next slide. PMP and PEP update a little bit. Contractors completed Roseburg, Pinehurst, Creswell, Grants Pass, Ashland, Myrtle Creek, Florence. They're wrapping up hopefully by next month. And I'll have a final overall report for the board in the October board meeting, along with the program review of PEP and PMP for all the new board members for the work session, including maps, what the program looks like, how it benefits the 67 paved airports in the state and what they get out of it, and how we've just recently changed to the regional shift so that all the board members get to see all of that work. We are out there right now doing pavement evaluation. We completed 3 and 4. Region is underway right now, doing inspections and completing the analysis. By October, we should be compiling all the Region 4 draft reports, and I'll show you what that looks like in October when we have more time to get into it with maps. So what airports are in what regions now, because that shift did happen last year, and it was done to make our money stretch further and allow for us to do more work in a smaller grouping of airports that made the most sense. So it went from 3 regions to 4 regions. And it does allow us to get more work done. These are just a couple pictures of the guys out there recently. I think the bottom one was a big patch at Creswell, and the top one was Pinehurst, I think. No, Roseburg, maybe. I think that was Roseburg. All right, next slide. Capital projects update, Sleds Bay runway rehabilitation design is underway. Obviously the survey and field work was completed last time we talked. I believe we're roughly 40%, 45% through design. And if we're not, we will be very soon. Aurora State Airport, Chiloquin Molino obstruction removal projects. Tony has an in-depth update on that in his brief. The Independence State Airport fencing project, the construction is at about 55% and on hold until the end of nesting season, which is September 1st. So we haven't been able to do anything since our last meeting because of that.
And for the Independence State, the fencing going across the extended runway area, that is not part of that, correct? Okay.
No. We've completed all of our current ODA FAA grant packages for the most recent grant cycle, which includes Joseph State Instrument Approach, Lebanon Environmental Phase 2, Aurora Crack Fill and Seal Coat Rehabilitation Emergency Generator and Electrical Project, Joseph State Obstruction Removal and Design, EA Phase 1, Independence Pappy, and Cape Blanco State Airport and Runway Rehabilitation Project. We just signed the contract for, and we will be underway soon and quickly. Design is anticipated to be done and ready to bid at the end of January. So we will be moving fast to get that project completed, so that we can fully use the money that was given to us by the state. Tony might have some additional information to go over, but that's just kind of where we're at. We've gotten most of the grants. DOJ is still holding on to a couple of the contracts. Review takes at least 30 days. They've been 60 days and even longer. It's a long time, but I'm sure they are swamped too. There's really nothing we can do about that time frame. So, but I think there's only 2 we're waiting on.
2 of those, yes. So we have a couple other that are also circulating.
Next slide. For our state airport master plan, we are in the same exact place we were when we met last. We are awaiting FAA comments and forecast approval and comments for all chapters 1 through 3. It went to 8 headquarters, and I talked to Ben 2 days ago, and he still hasn't heard back.
No idea when, because we thought we'd had that.
No
approval by
idea.
now.
He had told the project team that he anticipated to hear back from headquarters by the end of July.
Mhm.
And that's when he got back from vacation and hasn't heard anything back yet. So
Okay.
it is in the whole of DC right now. And as soon as we hear back, we'll be able to post all of those comments on the website and get the team and the consultant together to respond to the comments. And because I am sure that there will be comments,
Yeah.
and there always are. And then we'll be able to look at scheduling the next meeting and open house, which will roughly be 45 days from that time, because we have to publish it in the newspaper and it takes a little bit of time. I wish it could be quicker than that. I wish we could get together with the PAC. I don't want them to think that we're purposely dragging our feet and we've been putting out information. We just don't have anymore. So
Is there any way, I know we've got to wait until the FAA comes back, but is there any way we can actively ping them?
oh, we are.
Okay.
We are. And and Catherine should be getting those too. We're sending
Okay.
a lot of notices to let them know that we haven't forgot about the project and that we're
Anxiously awaiting. their
yeah, we
response.
are, and that we will be getting them the information the minute that it comes out from the FAA, so they can see what the FAA said and then schedule the meeting. And hopefully by the time we have the meeting, we'll have at least our first round of comments that the consultants can put together by then.
It's-
So,
And it's just working through the process. It's
It
just
is.
unfortunate that the process gets delayed.
Right.
It's hard to do coordination right now. I understand.
So I would just let you know that, so sending stuff from the Seattle ADO, it actually then goes to the Northwest Mountain region and then it goes to headquarters, and it's kind of some extra steps that were not previously in my experience having to be taken, like a master planning process would not typically have to go all the way to headquarters. It could have been dealt with at the Seattle ADO level. So this is kind of a new layer of oversight.
Overnight.
that is very true. And originally, the state planner, Ben Mello, had told the project team and the PAC that it would not go to headquarters.
Right.
And we wouldn't have been waiting this long. I anticipated it going to headquarters because of the comments that we received on this project and how much interest there is in it, fairly. And I still didn't think it was going to take this long, though.
And it's not just this, like
Every project.
HQ, yeah.
Yeah, that is a new one. Yeah. And usually it's only the projects that have a lot of public interest have been going, but now everything
Everything's going.
is going up region and then to headquarters.
Okay, well, we don't control the FAA processes, but we just can keep reminding them that we're still here.
We are trying to do that and still answer questions in the meantime, so.
Okay.
I hope to have a lot more good information next time we meet.
Well, good, super.
Next time. And that's it. Questions?
Angie,
Yeah. So questions from earlier on the slide deck, the UAS registration and renewals.
Oh, yeah,
Is that a time intensive process?
it's not.
Okay, so it's very simple.
It is very simple.
Okay, good.
I have it simple for a reason. You know that it wasn't our idea to do that,
I
that
know.
this was a legislative mandate
Yes.
without funding.
you're channeling Mark Peters right
Yes, I
Uh,
am. Is Mark on?
I handle all of that. It doesn't hit anybody else's workload and I do that in my free time.
Do you know what the compliance rate is? Are there any entities that have? That's
I wish I knew, but I haven't had time to do a spreadsheet. You know what, before our retreat or our board meeting in October, I'll put together what I can and see. It's the same, it is the same people that have always been doing it. So hopefully, I just don't know if there's any new ones out there that.
There's plenty of programs popping up.
I know, and I have been getting, and I have been getting a couple of them because
Okay.
the public agencies are a little bit better at looking at the rules and statutes and understanding that, oh, wow, we have to comply with something, so.
Okay. Good.
I'll let you know, but I.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be formal.
I'm just curious, is your aircraft registration process automated or are you still doing all those by hand?
It is, it's got a terribly old software system that is on its last leg that was created by ODOT when ODAV was a part of ODOT. So
way back where.
it is very old and we have been trying to put it in a budget and I think we might even have a line item in the budget. And hopefully it doesn't get flashed to look at getting new software, because what I would like to do is finally add the UAS piece into that so I can generate reports from it and make it even that much easier and easier for everybody to use from outside our agency and inside the agency. It doesn't, it's really clunky. The reporting structure isn't as good as we need it to be. And it doesn't really, it makes our fiscal staff touch things more than they should in sending things to collections and right, having to go into the program more than they should have to do that. So while it's automated, it's clearly on.
Okay, any other questions?
Nope.
Super, and then I think we're gonna do a little bit of rulemaking S&P.
Yeah, we are finally excited. Andrea, come on up. Andrea's gonna help out. She's actually done all of the heavy lifting and all of the coordination on the rulemaking when Seth left us. And then just taking control of this process, and I appreciate it immensely.
Thank you, and thank you, Chairman of the Board. So today
We're gonna have to really get you closer because you have such a gentle voice. I'm
I'll
not
try to
sure.
talk as loudly as I can.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, and if anybody online can't hear, send me something in the chat and I'll move the owl. Okay,
Thank you. So first, I'll just go over, this was our timeline for the rulemaking. So we actually started back in December and January working on those rules and outreach for a rulemaking advisory committee. In February, we presented our draft rules and requested the board to approve initiating rulemaking. In March and April, we held we scheduled and then held the rulemaking advisory committee meetings both for a staff and aeronautical studies. And then did review of the comments and the information from those meetings. In May, we submitted our proposed rules to DOJ for review. And then once they were returned, we submitted them through ODOT to be filed by Secretary of State for public comment. There was a public comment period between about the middle of May and June 21st. There was no comments received on the ASAP rulemaking, and there was one comment on the aeronautical study. And then finally, we are here today to bring you the final rules for approval. So, Kathy, you can go, it might actually be the third slide. I'm not sure if the next one's the aeronautical study. Okay, perfect. So I've got a small staff report here, and then I'll just go over the summary of the changes. So in December 2021, ODA began the rulemaking process to incorporate the changes of House Bill 2434.
Little louder, Andrea. I'm getting input.
And the House Bill 2434 is included as Appendix A in the staff report included with your board packet. The focus of the rulemaking centered on updating OAR 738-124 according to the changes required by HB 2434.
Yeah, we're good. Somebody actually accidentally unmuted themselves. We're good to go.
Okay, so a draft of the proposed rule changes is included as Appendix B in the report. In February of this year, ODAV solicited participation in the rulemaking advisory committee. 10 invitations were issued to various parties, including airport managers, consultants, and other stakeholders. 8 invitations were accepted. In April, we held one rulemaking advisory committee meeting. The agenda and comments are included with the report. ODAV filed notice of the proposed rules on May 19th, 2022 through ODOT and opened a public comment period from May 19th through June 21st. And the official filing is also included with the report. ODAV received no comments during the public comment period. And finally, the staff does recommend adoption of the final rules with amendments to 738-124 as presented. So the summary of changes is that, of course, the ROAR program was closed, so all references to ROAR were removed from the rules. The percentage of funds to the core program was changed from 50% to 75%. We added assist commercial air service to rural Oregon as a purpose under core priority 3. Changed the term sign to signage under priority 3 categories to state airport development for local economic benefit, including but not limited to signage and marketing. And then finally, we corrected the order of airport categories listed in OAR 738-124. So we do at this time ask the board to approve the rules as presented.
And just a little history for the board. This started, a couple of years back. At one point when we got the additional tax increase, they gave us a rural part with that, but if you want to actually establish rural air service, you're not going to do it for 500,000, which is the max we could grant. You have to have upwards of $5 million. So the rural air service program, and we had OPA in the room, and we had the airport managers in the room, and we all came to the decision that this is kind of what we wanted. Did a lot of discussion with the Robbie as well. So this is a culmination, as you can tell, of a lot of work. I think good work to try to get the best buck for the money that we do have. So any questions overall to the changes that Andrew mentioned? Okay, well, if I could then maybe get a first motion for the state aviation to I get right up here to go ahead and adopt the final rules with amendments to OAR 728. 124 as mentioned. If I can get that first motion, I got a first motion by Catherine. Do I have a second?
Second.
I got a second by Kenji. All those that approve, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Note that the board has approved adoption. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now Heather will present the staff report for the aeronautical studies.
Great. For OAR 738-070, 150, and 160. In December 2021, ODAV began rulemaking process to incorporate the changes of Senate Bill 38 included as Appendix A. Excuse me. The focus of the rulemaking centered on establishing a fee to cover the costs of tall structure evaluations according to the changes required by Senate Bill 38, and a draft of the proposed rule change is included as Appendix B in your packet. In March 2022, ODAV solicited participation in the Rulemaking Advisory Committee. 8 invitations were issued to various interested parties, including city representatives and other stakeholders. 3 invitations were accepted. ODAV held 1 RAC meeting. The agenda is attached as Appendix C. ODA filed notice of proposed changes on May 10th, 2022, with ODOT and opened public comment period from May 10th through June 21st, 2022. ODAV received 1 comment during the public comment period. The filing and comment are attached in Appendix D. ODAV policy 031 for aeronautical study fees and a fee schedule are also attached as Appendix E. The fee requirement will be effective 30 days after the Aviation Board approval of Rule Amendment to OAR 738-070-160. Final rules and recommendation is that staff recommends the adoption of the final rules with amendments as Appendix F to 738-070 as presented.
Okay, so another project that's been a while in the making. Any questions from any board member on the adoption of basically fees for construction reviews? Okay, so with that, do I have a first motion to approve the adoption of the final rules with amendments to 738-070, 150 and 160 as presented by the staff? First motion, I've got a first motion by Catherine. Do I have a second?
Awesome.
Got a second by Steve. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, the adoption is there unanimously approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's been a long time coming.
It has.
Yeah.
That's it. Right,
And that's done for me. Thank
I think so. That is that, okay. Andrea, it's the core presentation number 9. Okay.
Well, maybe not. Oh,
Lots going on. Okay, it's loading up. To Zoom, so I'm gonna share the screen. Okay, sharing with all of you. And there it is.
Perfect. Thank you, Kathy. So since we will be starting our course cycle coming up, our next one, we'd like to present you with some updates regarding core as well as an overview of where the program is right now. And then we'll also go over some information for the next cycle coming up.
Oops. Let me go back over here. Their mouse.
Here, I just wanted to share, I just actually got these pictures from Burns. They've just finished up this project of their fuel tank, and I just thought the pictures were really nice, so wanted to share those with you guys.
We need to see more jets doing that storage
Yeah.
out there, so.
Yeah, definitely. So for our program updates, of course, as most of you know, Kathy is retiring at the end of August, my partner in crime, so I'm definitely very sad that she's leaving, and as Heather mentioned, recruitment for her replacement is underway. So we'll be very excited to get them hired, and I am very excited though to have Holly here because she will definitely be helping out with some administrative stuff and getting the cycle started. Other updates, cycle 1 and cycle 2 are completely closed. Cycle 3 for 2019 is quickly being completed. We have about 5 open grants left in that cycle right now. And then, as has been mentioned, we're continuing to execute our 22 grants to get as many done as possible before the next cycle gets going. And then finally, our core cycle 7 will do an application period in October, and our estimated funding availability is $3 million.
Where does that rank in generally what we have from core cycle to core cycle? You know, are we high, we know we're,
What's been funded or what's been estimated?
what we think we're gonna open up the 22, 23, the 3 million, is that on the high side or is that pretty much in line?
Well, it is compared to earlier cycles, but it's definitely more in line with the past couple.
Past cycle, okay.
Yeah.
So the current cycle, the board approved a, appropriation of 3.7 million.
3.7, okay.
And then we've had three, grants that were canceled because they were also Connect Oregon. So those came off the top, so those dollars are rolling forward.
Got it.
Yeah. But that amount funded all of the grants in that cycle.
So next, just to go through each cycle, of course, as I said, the first cycle in 2017 is closed. We had originally approved almost 1.7 million. The actual funds expended were about 1.46 million, and that was for 31 grants. And then the second cycle was just closed this past June 30th. We had 24 grants originally funded for 1.69 million. And the actual expended was about almost that full amount. For 2019, we've got 5 active grants. Our total approved was 1.7 million on that cycle. And I think we're pretty close to expending just about that amount. For 2020, of course, was our first cycle where we had 100% funding on AIP grants through CARES Act. So we only ended up having 4 grants that were funded in that cycle. One's already been closed, 2 are active, and then one of them we are still working on getting executed. And then the next cycle, we also had AIP grantees with 100% funding from the FAA. So we were able to apply those funds to some of our priority 3 and 2 grantees in that cycle. So we've got still 15 active grants in that cycle. We're still doing a lot of work on that one. And then of course, last year's cycle, as we said, we've got about, well, it says 24 there, but I know we've executed a couple more in the past couple of days since I put this together. So it's probably around 20 or so, still waiting to be executed. As Kathy mentioned, 3 of the grantees in that cycle received Connect Oregon funds, so those ones were canceled. And we go ahead and go to the next slide. So here we've got what our open obligations are currently, and so you can see we've got about 5.8 million in grant funds obligated. Our carryover from the previous cycle was about 2.7 million. That is higher than it normally has been in the past, and that's because the war revenue was transferred to the core program last year. Our fuel tax revenue for the first half of this year has been about 1.2 million, and the forecast is about another 1.5 million. So we're looking again at an estimate of funding availability of $3 million. And then finally,
Oh, we're gonna fix the computer.
we've got lunch.
Sorry, lunch got here.
I'm gonna touch it.
Oh,
Oh, perfect.
Oh, sorry, actually, there is one more slide here. So this is our tentative timeline, and we try to run the cycle on this timeline every year. So October, the application period. In November, we'll do our internal review just to make sure that the applications are complete. November and December, we will get the applications out to the Aviation Review Committee for their review and grading. In January, we'll hold our meeting with the Aviation Review Committee where they'll put together the project list for the board. And then in February, we'll bring that to the board for their approval. And then finally, after the approval, we will start reaching out to our grantees to work on the agreement process for the next round. So here finally is Heather had mentioned a lot of our grantees and have had issues with us only having the 150,000 cap on our grants, and they're needing additional funds, that sort of thing. So we wanted to bring a request to the board today to increase just the general cap for this upcoming course cycle to 250,000 from 150,000. Per Oregon Administrative Rule 738-124-0040, the board does have the discretion to approve a larger grant amount as long as it serves the purpose of the core program. So of course, our grantees are always required to put that information in their application. The reason part of it we want to do this is because we do have some extra revenue from the rural program being closed. and then to help out our grantees who are facing the increased project costs. There will be some additional administrative work because any agreement over 150,000 will have to be reviewed by DOJ. So that could cause some lag in getting the agreements executed, but we'll work with our grantees on that to get that done. And then finally, after the February board meeting, I put together a report just basically stating the effects that it had on the cycle, and then any recommendations we might have to increasing our general cap for core grants. So right now, we would like to request, or staff recommends, increasing the maximum allowable core grant amount from 150,000 to 250,000 just for cycle 7 coming up.
Okay.
And we would, I want to preface what she just said. We will still be requiring if a grant application would like that increase from 150 to 250 to state why in their project so that the board can see that, right? That this isn't just because you have the option to do it.
This one, we've talked chair to staff a little bit on this one. History wise, you know, this board has always been vectored towards funding infrastructure versus, you know, operations thing, because infrastructure, everybody gets to use it. It's permanent. You know, allowing a grant for somebody to do a hangar helps less people, but still needed. So basically, for this one, what's going to happen, as I anticipate, the minute you raise the cap, eventually everybody applies to the cap. It's like the war. Remember ROAR? They got a maximum of 500, and by God, every ROAR grant that came in was, we want 500. So that's what's going to happen. I'd anticipate that folks will come in asking for 250 for infrastructure, which means that there'll be less at the tail end, and at the tail end is economic development. That's probably, for myself, that's not a bad thing, because it increases the emphasis on getting money out there for infrastructure at the expense of economic development, which is the third tier of the core project. But I think the board needs to be aware of what happens if we allow higher grant requests to come in, is you will short those individuals at the bottom tier. So right now the tier is FAA match. I'm sorry, Heather, you're gonna say something.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to let you all know that there's a couple data points in this that will not change. The overall project cost defines that.
Mhm.
So that will not change. And if they can't meet that 10%,
Yep.
they can't get to the 250, right? So do you know, I hope that makes sense.
It does.
Because in their overall project still, I mean, it's going to be hard to get there, especially for some projects when the project is not changing too much in cost. It will be a little bit harder to get to the 250. And so I just wanted to let you all know that that data set is not changing.
You bet. So overall, what I think that's this will flavor the core project and will continue to slant toward infrastructure. And we may get back to some economic development. I'm not for sure, because there's been several core grant cycles that we've run through that we never got into tier 3 because we ran out of money. But that kind of does go with the emphasis of infrastructure to the benefit of everybody. So I just wanted to lay that out there, that's kind of the big picture, how this would slant the program overall. And then I appreciate the discussion that we need to go back and get permanent, because legislation gave us this 150 cap with the sideline saying it would be kind of an exception to go over. That's
No, that was
that's-
rulemaking.
Yeah.
rulemaking, sorry, not legit rule. It's in a higher authority than what the board is. Let me put it that way.
It is.
So with the idea that it would be, we approve exceptions, not as a general rule. I'm sure they'll give us a leeway if we want to go ahead and go above and do numerous 250s. I don't know if we'll have the money for that, but I appreciate the idea that we do need to go back and get the rulemaking process energized to change the regulations so that we get it currently codified. So everybody understands that the board is just not continuously overruling the general philosophy of what the folks who set this core grant process up wanted. Kenji, you had your hand up first.
Sure, quick question, do we have any data points on how much project costs have actually increased because of inflation market, and see if we can tie that to?
We don't have many at this time. It is fluctuating.
Mike.
It is so big right now.
35%. 35%.
We're saying 40.
It is anywhere from 25 to 60%, depending on the project. And that is on FAA projects. And that's a whole different data set than a non-FAA project, if you will, right? So, but it's still hard. We're still having delivery issues. We're
Steel,
still-
concrete,
right,
it's
across
labor,
the
it's
board.
everything.
It is all things associated with it. On the FAA side, it's a little bit higher.
Given that figure of 40%, I think that's pretty appropriate, and based on the discretion of staff, they can take a look at applications as well and say, hey, even though you're asking for 250, you're not gonna get it.
Mhm.
Because it doesn't, you can't justify, it. So.
And I will caution the board a little bit on this. The idea that that the staff does great work. The entity who applies for 250 will do their very best bit to show that they need all 250.
Oh, yeah.
The idea that we're gonna be able to parse out exactly, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
It goes through a lot of steps. But if you lay out a funded project, generally, the individuals who review it at the staff and at the acts, they'll accept that as well. So just understand, we're going to inflate. It's just going to happen. But it's probably something that may need to happen. Just need to be aware of it, and we may need to go through this one time, run this cycle through, see what's happening. We may adjust fire at some later date. Catherine?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions for you, Heather. So, of the 5 commercial service airports in the state that qualify for the core program, I would anticipate all of them would go for the 250.
Yes, they
to
will.
do the matching AIP, right? And then that would mean, as Martha said, is a reduction in, say, funds available for general aviation airports across the state. Because I can tell you for sure, the commercial service airports would be able to justify the 250 because, all of those projects are gonna be spendy.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
But-
if you agree with what I just.
I
stated.
do agree with that. We're setting this program this year at $3 million. You saw in years past, it was anywhere from 1.5 to 3.7. I don't think that's gonna be an issue, to be honest. Out of 37 projects, I think 15 were over 1.5 million, which for small GA, it's a 10%. For commercial, it's what, 25%? Is that?
They'll
what it
still
is?
match it. They'll all be-
They will.
They will come
They
back. It'll
absolutely
happen.
will, but it's not going to be the whole gamut is what I was trying to get at. Not every project is going to hit that large of a sum to be able to pull down the 250. And I'm guessing it will be in the FAA in priority 1 grants. I would guess that it will be 50% of them. And then I don't know if there will be any resiliency projects at all. And I will guarantee you that the priority 3 ones will be a lot harder to get to that because they will all have to be likely at least $2.5 million projects, which is hard to.
And what we may do as the board goes through this, and the board has the right to do this. We may cap the amount of 250s that we give. And if we want more to go to general aviation and we feel that some of the larger airports are sucking up all the money, we can pass policy that cuts. So there's a ability going in, staff will come in and make the recommendations, but I think overarching is we need to keep in mind, where do we want that money to go to in general? So if this all of a sudden becomes a reach by the larger airports at the expense of general aviation, the board has the right to ask the staff to go back to bring us at least proposed wordage or some kind of board rules or follow on administrative rules to get this to get the money where this board feels it needs to go.
Have a follow-up.
Okay, sorry.
So, of the general aviation airports, if we increase the cap will there be a challenge for those airports to meet the match on?
I just ran some numbers on that, if I could. So most of the priority threes do not have projects large enough even to reach the 150 cap right now with their, it's a 10% match. And so among the priority ones in this current cycle, 7 of them were at the 150 mark. And of the priority 2 and 3, 8 reached that number. So out of 37 grant total, 15 were at the cap. Some of them are coming in as we get the final project cost, their actual grant is going to be below the 150 mark because we get the final numbers from their engineer when we issue the grant. That said, the other option that the board has when you are presented with the list and the cost in February for your final approval, that's when you will have the option on making the final appropriation because we'll have the actual numbers how many dollars have rolled into cycle 7. So the previous cycles will be at closeout, we'll have the actual numbers of the revenue, and then you'll be able to set your appropriation based on the grants that came in, the amount that was asked for, and the amount that's available. So the 3 million that's being discussed right now is an estimate, but you will actually set that amount based on the revenues available at that time at your February board meeting. So you'll have that discretion as well.
And it will be more than 3 million. And at that time, staff will be recommending to roll over additional revenues from the other cycles that are still there, that money does exist now. And we'll be able to give the board the option of how much the actual program will be for the year.
And it may be towards, if we do get that many applications and we run short of infrastructure dollars, we always have the ability to take a look at going, okay, we funded the big projects. Now let's take a look at the little projects that don't get funded and then do at the end a direct comparison. So if we really want the little guys, we're going to have to take a big guy and take him off the board. That'll probably be the last thing we do to make sure that we really are funding what we want to fund. Does that make sense?
I would also say, I kind of like your idea, Chair. Perhaps even before we get to that point, setting a maximum number that we would want to consider for the highest grant award. Because I think if you put it out there, you're going to get, if you put more in the water, you're going to get more fish going to come to your bait. And so I think you may get more applicants at that higher level. And 6 of them right there at that highest level eats half of your 3 million. So I think establishing a level, whether it's 2, 4, 6, or some number, just a consideration of that prior to starting the entire process would probably be a wise thing. Just cautiously, because I think you do want to preserve this grant cycle as well for others. If you put out more, you're going to get more interest.
Would there be an opportunity at, say, a January meeting to get a little bit more information on the number of grants you have, give us a little bit of insight, and then we should probably develop, if we choose to develop that should probably be, the board should come to that conclusion before it goes for the act review.
Yes. So
Otherwise, we're boxing up the whole process.
we can bring it back to the board in December to do just that. At that
Okay.
time, we'll have all of the numbers and all of the information to be able to have more informed discussion and be able to make a decision.
Okay.
We would just have to be able to allow the applicants to apply. Now, our program, unlike Connect Oregon, is very objective. It is not subjective. You have to have all of your information and it has to be in, and it has to be proven, and it has to be justified. There's difference, right? So you will be able to see all of that in December of how it's submitted,
I would
just like FAA stuff.
just say from a large airport perspective.
Sure.
Chasing $150,000 grant is time consuming if you're on a $10 million project. You may have a much greater consideration for going after a $250,000 grant, even on any $10 million projects. And I know that our 5 commercial service airports are probably all easily doing somewhere between $5 and $10 million projects in any given year, sometimes multiples of those. And so
Yeah.
it's going to just become much more attractive for someone to go after a larger pot of money and take something away from someone else, potentially.
And I
So-
think probably it would be, we may go with, we want a percentage of core dollars must go to general aviation. We may go along somewhere like, help us think about it.
I think that's a really good idea, and I'd like to be able to at least. So when we open the cycle, we have to at least be able to tell the applicants
You
that
bet,
there's an
you bet.
opportunity for that. That said, when we do the staff review of completeness for the ARC and the board processes, we'll be able to put all of that information together and develop a staff report that may say, in staff's opinion, we would like the board to entertain $200,000 or whatever it may be. It's a little bit tough in the beginning because the objective piece of this, the numbers just go back to a straight up mathematical equation, right? It's like this percentage of that's how it works out in the math. So going forward, maybe we set it at 200 instead of 250 right now.
We'll wait till the numbers come in, but I do want to make sure that when you open the core cycle, that there is, you know, you can advertise up to 250, but it is very clear if they go 1 penny over the 150, that it is clear that there is additional board guidance that will have to be obtained for that 250 to get approved.
The rules
Just so
say
they
that.
don't think that they can apply. I don't want to get any hurt feelings here, but anything over 150 gets additional scrutiny.
The scrutiny exists in rule because the board actually has the ability to fund up to 500,000. So there are processes already in place. We will keep those in place. And the board can also have, usually the applicants are at the board meeting too. We can also have them all come and
What I don't want to get into is 94 applicants begging us, because we can't, in that session, I'm telling you right now, I've been through this process and it's the same thing for Connect Oregon. Connect Oregon, the applicants don't time. Because you're not gonna delve into their project. You can't get the details. I understand you say they can come. The board is not in a position during that 10 seconds when they come and talk to us to really get it. It just doesn't happen. So I just want to make sure that they're upfront. And we got a process that the acts, because I want to honor the aviation component of the acts, they take their time. I just want to honor their rankings. But I just want them to be clear that this board runs a lot of general aviation. Commercial service gets their own money. This
We
is
did-
not a grab. This core is not to be turned into commercial service dollars.
we understand that, and this took a lot of discussion before I brought it to the director even. We looked at the last cycle, we looked at the projects up, I'm familiar with what's happening at the FAA level, all the projects being asked for right now. I'm familiar statewide with what it looks like, and we talked about all of that. But we will be able to put it together in a more finite package in December for the board to show them, to
Little
show you
more
all the
data.
numbers. Here's the numbers, here's how.
If I may, there's one more piece to that. And Andrea alluded to it. In the 22 cycle, the one we're currently trying to get executed, we still have 20 grants that have not yet executed. Some of them are FAA, they're waiting for the grants and they're getting them now. And so we're starting to push those through. The others are smaller. These are the category 3s, priority 3s, where they're again trying to redo their engineering and so forth. We're not sure how many of them will have another project for next year because they're having such a dickens of a time this year. I'm hoping that they'll be able to get these projects finally done and they can apply for their next phase of whatever they're doing. We hope they'll show up in the fall, let's say, okay, we finally got through that. But the reality is, I'm not sure how many of the priority 3 project sponsors will be able to do a fiscal year 23, a cycle 7 one. They might have to wait for the cycle 8.
Okay.
So that's just kind of a piece, I think that might weigh into some of the uniquenesses we're going to face in cycle 7.
And the third priority is, it's not an FAA grant for the rest of the project funding. They have to have the project funding available. So, I mean, if it is a large grant, they have to, the municipality has to have it in their budget. It has to be already budgeted and guaranteed. And if it's a private airport, we have to see the bank statement of the money that they have to do the project. So it's a little bit different.
Okay, so with that discussion, we're looking at this specific amendment, this specific motion with simply allowing the staff to, accept core grants up to 250K. Before we get to that motion, any additional questions from any board members?
For just the cycle.
I was gonna
Just
say,
this one.
just for this one.
Just this 1 second. Okay, well then, if I could entertain a motion to approve adoption to the allowing a core grant for this cycle of up to 250K. That's why administrative, basically altering the I won't say altering the rules. Okay, well, I'll say it's, I'll just approve an adoption to move the grant cap for core from 150 to 250 for this current upcoming core cycle. Do I have a first motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, so first by Kenji, second by Catherine. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Hearing that, motion has passed. Thank you very much. Okay, thanks, Andrew. Really good data on that. We look forward to talking more about this coming up.
Yeah, thank you.
This is the cycle of righteousness is what core is. It's all good. It's all good. Okay, so with that, Kathy, are we on for lunch?
We are on for lunch break, so I'm going to pause the recording and the broadcast, and our lunches have arrived.
So come back at 12:45,
Yes, 12:09, so 12:40.
12:40.
All right, we'll set our timers.
Okay. Drives a tight ship.
Now we're unmuted. Now everybody can hear us.
Super, Kristen, are you on? Awesome. So you got Kate Blanco and the budget. So over to you.
Okay, great. So I will share my screen here. Okay, here we go. So for my finance presentation this afternoon, I'm going to go over the 23-25 budget development overview. And then we'll have a vote for POP 109 for Kate Blanco. And then we have a vote at the end to approve the 23-25 agency request budget. Okay, so first, this is an overview of the budget development. So we started with our current service level, which is our base budget without any additions. And then at the last board meeting, we voted on all of our policy option packages. And so when we put those together, that's when we come up with our ARB, our agency request budget. So the next step in the process is we will work with the governor's office and the chief financial office, and we'll develop the governor's budget. And then at the beginning of next year, we'll go through the legislative session and our budget goes through that process. And then at the end of that process, we'll have our 23-25 legislatively adopted budget. And then we will execute on that budget from July of 2023 until June of 2025. Okay, so first, we're going to have a vote for POP 109. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we're voting on. So that is a policy option package for Cape Blanco State Airport capital construction, runway, and electric rehab. The request is $2.4 million of general funds. And the board did vote on the other 8 POPs at the last meeting, and then we added this one in at the last minute. So the background on this is that we received funding for this project with House Bill 5202 during the 2020 session. And that was for general funds that were only available during the 21-23 biennium. So when we looked at the project timelines, we realized we would not be able to complete this whole project in the 21-23 biennium because that's only about a year from when we received the funding. So what we are planning on doing now is putting phase 2 into the 23-25 budget. So phase 1 is undergoing right now. So phase 2, we're going to be reconstructing the 75-year-old runway. We'll be adding new airfield lighting system, a new electrical building, and then we're going to be doing new runway edge lights and pilot navigational aids. And before we go to the vote, does anyone have any questions on this POP?
No questions, Kristen.
Okay, so here is the motion for the vote.
Okay, super. If there's no questions then, let me entertain a first motion to approve the policy option package 109 Cape Blanco Capital Construction Runway and Electric Rehab for the 23-25 Oregon Department of Aviation budget. So I got a first motion by Catherine. Do I have a second? I have a second by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Now, if a board, Cape Blanco is one of the identified airports for resiliency and operations. That's good to see.
Okay, thank you. And then the next vote will be for the agency request budget. So before we vote on this, I'm going to give you a full background on this. And I know Kathy sent you all a link to our budget, but I don't expect you to read that word for word. It's over a 500-page document. So this will give you the high-level summary so you know what you're voting on. So our total budget with all of our policy option packages for this biennium is just under $53 million. In this chart, I have it broken down for each appropriation, so you can see how much we have for each. GA is the General Aviation Entitlement Appropriation, so it's about 7.2 million. Oops, I didn't mean to advance yet. The Operations Appropriation is 10.6 million. The Aviation System Action Appropriation is 14.7 million. Pavement Maintenance is 2.26 million. Aircraft registration is 193,000. The airport's project appropriation is 2.4 million, and the capital construction appropriation is 15.4 million. And in the further slides, I'm going to go into these in a little more detail. But here I also broke down the budget by fund type. So GF is for general funds, OF is other funds, FF is federal funds. And this budget has a total of 16.59 FTE or full-time employees and 17 positions. We do have one position that's a seasonal maintenance, and so they're only 0.59 of an FTE. So this next slide is a high-level overview of the revenues that make up the budget. So the majority of our revenues come from jet fuel, avgas, and MOGAS tax. So that's 38% of our budget. Followed by federal funds, which make up 34%. And then in this budget, we have 21% general funds. So typically our agency does not have general funds in our budget. So this is actually a first for us. And then these other small revenue sources, non-business licenses and fees, those are mostly our aircraft registration fees. So we have about $785,000 of revenue there. And that funds all of our matching portion for our federal grants. Rents and royalties is land leases and hangar fees. Sales income is fuel sales at airports. And then in this next slide, I'm going into a little more detail about our appropriations. Right here we have our operations appropriation. I wanted to show you the breakdown per fund type for operation. So operations is the appropriation that holds most of our staff. So it's 15.09 staff. The total funds is 10.6 million. This pie chart right here will show you how those funds break down. So you'll see the majority of those funds are in service and supplies. So that's a budget category, and that makes up travel, office supplies, legal fees, building maintenance, training, professional services such as engineering. So there's a lot that goes into that category. Personal services is 37% of operations. So that's all of our staff costs and our benefits. Special payments is 5%. So those are payments to ODOT and DAS for some of our central services. And then capital outlay is 6% of our operations budget. Aircraft registration is only 193,000. So this pie chart right here breaks down the funds for aircraft registration. So the majority of that is for one of our staff members. And then 8% is for service and supplies and special payments. And as I mentioned earlier, the revenue for aircraft registration is more like 780,000. So it's a low cost program for the amount of revenue that we get. Pavement maintenance is 2.26 million. And so we have half of a staff there. The majority of the expenses there are for professional services such as engineering and then construction services. And then the personal services there for the staff is only 8%. These next appropriations are all for our projects. So the first one here is general aviation entitlement. So those are all of our small projects. So anything under $1 million, we put that in that budget. So at the last meeting, if you recall, you voted on all of our general aviation entitlement projects. So that's what's included here. And then I also included additional funds for carryover projects that we're not starting in this next biennium, but we started in this current biennium and we're still finishing them up. And then airport construction projects is the Cape Blanco project that you just voted for. And then capital construction projects are all of the other capital construction POPs that you voted on at the last meeting. And then the last appropriation is the ASAP program, the Aviation System Action Program. So we're putting $14.7 million into this program for the next biennium. And then that's broken up into 75% for core and 25% for SOAR. Then this next slide, it just shows you the summary of everything that I just talked to you about. So those are all of our appropriations total together. That's how we get the almost 53 million there. And then you can also see on the right-hand side where the staffing is. As I said, it's a majority in operations, one in aircraft registration, a half staff in pavement maintenance, and that's where we get our 16.59 staff. And then that's all I had for that. So I'll open it up to any questions that you have before we vote on the agency request budget.
Any questions on what is in the upcoming budget? Don't think we have any questions. You did a great job.
Okay, great.
Super. So then, are we ready for a vote then? Ready? Okay. So, real quick, do I have a first motion for the State Aviation Board to approve the 23-25 Oregon Department of Aviation budget request?
So moved.
I have a first motion by Kenji. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Steve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, budget's passed, Kristen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, and then next, going on to Cape Blanco, is that true? No, we got not Cape Blanco, let's go get the airport's managers update.
Okay, well, I'm still trying to get my presentation loaded after the lunch break, so Kathy, if you could pull it up. and
I
get
think
going.
I could do that. Give me a minute.
close out some of these others.
Well, weather a little bit up, coming up, I just wondered, data presentation, just how we're doing overall as a agency statewide on obstruction removal. We're gonna be able to have a good discussion about that at the strategic session coming up on October.
For statewide,
Yeah, just we wanted to have a look overall, because I think that's one of the KPMs that we're kind of having a difficulty meeting. I just want to get all the data collections going and
yeah, KPMs, we'll be looking at here in the next couple of months, and we can definitely have a bigger discussion about that.
okay, good.
It's loading.
Yeah, sorry, photos, bog it down.
Yeah, your presentations are always data rich. So it's gonna take a minute since it's coming through my
Sure.
hotspot.
Right. Yeah, mine took a minute. I can try to jump on the meeting. But my internet's also very slow.
Yeah, it'll just give it another 30 seconds. It should finish loading up. Just working on it.
Or the PDF works fine too. If that's a little easier.
It would be. Yeah, because I will hit 44%. Okay, let me go to the PDF. There it is. So these are the ones that upload to the website. And for people who are watching, these presentations have been loaded to the Oregon Department of Aviation website under this meeting, so you should be able to access them as PDFs and download them as well. Okay, just work on uploading that, which is a much smaller document. Loading.
I guess there's a few pictures in here.
There are.
Which I'm sure.
Just a couple. I believe I have it. There it is. I'm still getting those. Those don't sit in there. There it is. And we are in business, so let me go to. Share this. I didn't see the screen. I am sharing.
Can people on the call see the shared screen? Do they see a title page with the airport's update?
Yes, we can.
So now I'm gonna just move over here.
And then I think if you press Control F, it might go full screen. Okay. Next, oh, that's Control F is fine. View is
You
it,
good with that then?
Control L. There we are, okay. All right. This is just a photo of the Oak Ridge State Airport, and I mentioned Oak Ridge here in a minute. Next slide, please. So I also have a couple new staff to introduce.
You start young.
Right? Yeah. So this is Marlon Pilcher. We want to welcome him as our new airport maintenance specialist. He's joining the team with our other two operations specialists and our maintenance specialist, Jerry Sturris. Marlon's bringing more than 40 years experience in construction, maintenance, and driving and equipment operation. It's already proven to be very valuable asset to the team and And so we're very happy to have him on board. He also has served in the U.S. Coast Guard and enjoys restoring cars, fly fishing, off-roading, and traveling, and spending time outdoors with his family. So welcome, Marlon. And he's over with the crews right now over in Joseph doing some work out there this week. Next slide, please. And then also Kevin Olson. He's our new leasing and contract specialist. He's joining us from ODOT, where he, among other places, has more than 26 years experience in working with titles and right-of-way in California, Nevada, and Oregon. So he's very familiar with on the state level, dealing with right-of-way and other title work in this field. So he's also proving to be very valuable. He's got a lot of lease work ahead of him through the last couple of years of COVID and just catching up on a whole bunch of things that we're catching up on. So Kevin also is a musician. He's been playing music for over 40 years, and he very recently, just last week, toured with his band in California. Welcome to Kevin also.
Now, do you know what kind of music? Is he a country fan, a rock fan?
From what I hear, it's a little bit of all of the above. But I think right now this band, I think it's a little bit more into rock. So
Okay.
yeah. Next slide, please. Just an update on a couple upcoming fly-ins today at Aurora. The Columbia Aviation Association has the Spirit of 45. They've got a fly-in with, I believe they're operating a Stenson, and then I think they might also have, I think it's maybe a B-25 over on the apron at Aurora. So today they're going to be, they're primarily just operating on their property at the CAA clubhouse, but then they're doing flying. They're doing flights from the apron, and then I'm told that they have such demand that they're going to spill into tomorrow, so they can accommodate everyone who'd like to get a ride. The 14th at Independence, the EAA is having a stolen flying event, and then on September 3rd, the Oregon Aviation Historical Society is going to have their Great Oregon Homebuilt flight. Next slide, please. We do have a few airports that are closed for firefighting activities: the Crescent Lake State Airport, the Oak Ridge State Airport, and Toketee. And at Chiloquin, we do have some helicopter firefighting operations going on, but it's not a closure there at this point. I just checked the map, and it hasn't changed since last night's thunderstorms, but these fires are largely driven from lightning strikes, is my understanding. Next slide, please. We have a couple other closures that we're anticipating. At Aurora, we're expecting an overnight closure. We're planning for an overnight closure beginning August 15th at 9 p.m. We're anticipating 12 hours for survey work. This is for the Aegis for the master plan. And this is a runway closure, and the work in progress will occur on all surfaces, but we're only closing the runway. And if we can reopen sooner, we absolutely will. We're trying to minimize the impacts of the closure, but there is some work that requires a little bit of daylight, so we don't know if we can get much prior to 9. And then at Bandon, we had P&B going on this week, but I'm told this morning that work is now concluded, and so those closures are now canceled. Next slide, please. In our last board meeting, we talked about VPDs, the vehicle pedestrian deviations at Aurora, and we have had one recent VPD. This occurred Sunday. So we're in the early phases of just investigating, looking into the details for that incident, and following up with the responsible parties, and we're just looking into it. We're working with airport groups and developing driver training for employees, contractors, guests, users of the airport. And I want to thank Dave Wagner of Willamette Aviation. He's been working real hard putting together some information for that. On June 25th, we held a runway and RSAT meeting at Willamette Aviation. It was well attended, and this was primarily put on by the tower manager, Raul, And it was attended by a lot of tenants, airport users. There were two FISDO staff there, and I'm told they had commented that it was one of the better RSAT meetings they had ever seen. So I want to shout out to Raul for doing an excellent job with that. We talked about VPDs, mitigation, and just general airport safety. And then next slide, please. We do have a couple changes at the gates, the two gates that we own and operate, the purple gate and blue gate. We have new call boxes that were recently installed. And these are going to add phone calling functionality so that people who maybe don't have the gate code can reach out to the businesses inside the fence and then dial them, and then the gate can be opened remotely for them to gain access to their business. So this is a very recent upgrade, and we are going to be sending out correspondence, and we're planning to test the equipment and put the system into operation at the end of this month. So we'll be following up with more information on that. Next slide, please. A couple of project updates. Heather already mentioned some of these, but at Independence, we are planning for the west side of the fence to be constructed beginning early next month. No, the north portion was removed that cut across the approach end of the runway on the north. We are looking for that to be included in a second construction phase that's probably still a few years out, but relocated further north when we can go through the environmental and planning for that. We're not expecting any impacts from that fence project. It's primarily the contractors are going to access from the west side, so it should be pretty straightforward when they get that work done. At Aurora, we are planning for that surface seal and markings project that Betty and Heather had mentioned earlier. This is going to do some pavement maintenance and fresh markings on all taxiways and aprons on state-owned property. We've held 2 open house meetings that we've invited the public to come in and listen to the phasing and impacts this project would have to airport operations, and so we've incorporated their comments, and we've finalized a phasing plan that minimizes the runway closure required to get this work done on the connecting taxiways, and in a phasing that allows aircraft to kind of relocate and try to stay operational as much as possible. So we're really happy about that. And then we're moving ahead with the design for that. We are planning for fall construction, weather and grant issuance permitting, and we're expecting about 5 non-consecutive closure days for the runway, and then other additional closure times for certain portions of the taxiways and aprons and taxiways on the airfield. At Toledo, we have gone out to bid. We received bids August 2nd, and we are working toward awarding construction and beginning that work later this month or early next month. We're trying to go as soon as possible. We expect this project will take 3 to 4 weeks, where the apron and portions of the connecting taxiways will be closed. And it will, you know, with prices being in, with inflation and costs coming in high, the bids came in high, but we will be able to get this work done utilizing all of the funds that had been approved in both cycles 3 and cycle 4 for this project. Okay, next slide. So we were talking about obstruction removal. We are working on the rewrite of the EA for Aurora. We had sent the draft chapters to the FAA earlier this spring, and they had requested some additional information, and they had requested changes for all chapters where previously we had been submitting one chapter at a time. We're somewhat in new territory with them as we're working with a different environmental specialist. And so we've incorporated the comments from the first chapter into all of the draft chapters, and we are anticipating the chapters to be updated at the end of this week and to submit those chapters to the FAA early next week. Yes, so that will then, that's the first step to then move on to the FAA's review and then public comment and notice and so on until we can get the EA completed. We cannot get any trees down until the EA is complete. And once the EA is done, we will be working to get whatever willing property owners before appraisals and easement acquisition. Any property owners who are willing, I'm happy to work with them to try to get the trees down as soon as possible, including there's a portion on ODOT's right away that we believe we can get some trees down on a faster time frame. Similar story at Malino, except the EA is complete. Survey is ongoing. We're focusing on surveying the trees that are on our property and the adjacent properties where easements already exist or are in place. And we are planning for removing those trees after nesting season. It'll be later this year. It'll be kind of mid, late fall or early winter. So very excited to be getting a little bit of progress at Malino, getting those trees down. And then at Chiloquin, the survey will begin after Malino is completed. Okay, next slide, please. I have a couple updates here for Pacific City. Our crews were out there just very recently in the last couple of weeks. We do have some new signage that I know the Friends of Pacific City had been very interested in getting replaced. We have some new paint out there. We're still planning some surface marking updates on the runway and on the apron. That is going to be happening here in the next couple of months or before, if we can squeeze it in before the rain season this fall. We are planning later this month or early September to survey the drainage system at Pacific City. And this is utilizing the Tillamook County grant funds that we received or were awarded earlier this spring. And that is going to inform us on designing what the need is for the drainage improvements that we really need to make the best use of the limited funds we have available. And so the first step of that is doing the survey work. So just to address some of Mr. Inman's concerns or comments that I recall from that letter. In previous cycles, in cycle 3, we had some SOAR projects for the drainage improvements and pavement maintenance. Again, we've talked about in the last couple of board meetings, we talked about SOAR funds and they're limited and we don't have sufficient funds to complete all of our projects. And right now, again, the first step is putting together a plan and understanding what our drainage improvements, what do we need to do, how can we best utilize those funds, and then when funds are available.
Which projects at Pacific City you are good, this next solar cycle. Which, do you have a good feel yet for which projects at Pacific City you're going to try to roll in to compete for the solar cycle?
For cycle 5?
Yes.
So we are still trying to close out or complete prior cycle projects that have been carried forward. And so that includes the drainage improvements and pavement maintenance. And we also had an unsuccessful request for funds to construct the access road on the newly acquired property. So those are really going to be the 3 main priorities. And
So those will roll into this next cycle as well, trying to get
Yeah.
those ones.
they'll
Okay.
still carry forward as
Okay.
approved projects, and when funds are sufficient, we'll look at completing those.
All right.
Yeah, definitely.
And everybody kind of got a good grip on how the SOAR cycle goes, so that everybody knows that, we'll kick off in October and it'll go through the act review and they kind of, are we gonna take SOAR through act review this time?
It's a 2-year cycle though,
Right.
so not this fall,
Correct.
Oh, yes or no?
not this fall.
Not this time. And it's to be on the follow-up cycle.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
It falls with the biennium.
okay.
And then next slide, please. Just some additional photos of some of the signage and other work that occurred out there. I also just want to point out, this is my last slide. I just want to point out that the guys are out at Joseph working very hard. And I was getting photos filling in, but too late to incorporate them into this presentation. So I'm happy to share updates on what they're doing out there in the next meeting.
Super.
And then next slide, and that should be the end. Are there any questions?
No, any questions on operations? Good to see you getting the new hires and getting, coming up, at one time we promised Joseph, a volunteer out there that does the mowing, that we would get him off his 1940s tractor. And then we had to kind of renege on that promise because COVID hit and we lost all our money. How are we doing on maybe re-energizing, getting that poor volunteer who donates his time off a 1940s tractor and onto something a little bit more modern?
We so we have a contract employee and he is an employee and so he's right now using a mower and tractor that he's renting. So that's working for us for the
Okay.
short term, but we are looking at procuring some equipment for snow removal that also could potentially be
Fuel
utilized
purpose.
for mowing. Yep.
Okay. All right, super, thanks. All right, well, that kind of brings us up to board updates and the like. And so coming up at the next session, Catherine has graciously volunteered to host us. For every year, we kind of host a strategic session that either runs 4 hours or a whole day, depending on what we want to talk about. Focus on the board on, are there any big changes that we need to, think about changing direction on one way or the other? Are there programs that we need to kind of help the staff target a little bit more? I think one of them we're going to have to talk about is obstruction removal, because if you take a look at, there's a certain set of KPMs that the legislature wants us to report back to them. And we're kind of, that's probably, we need to take a look at those KPMs, take a look at the top 3 that we're not meeting, and kind of figure out how we're going to meet them. Obstacle removal, just for your essay, has been a long-term. It's probably deteriorated over the last 5 years. It's not gotten better every year, it gets worse. So if we can, how we can get that trend to reverse itself would be nice. Then there's some other KPMs we'll talk about as well. But overall, right now, the strategic session is kind of like today, we start off with, look at today, KPMs, what do we need to do better? Then a little bit, maybe in the next few years out, and then some of the things that are on the far horizon. That's kind of how it's structured. If you look at the current topics that we have on tap. And then I asked the staff, I put it on the screen for you. No, that's great. And then I asked the staff that, these are things that the board can actually, have something to say on. If we have time at the end, there's some briefs that perhaps they would like just to make us aware of things that are happening in their world. But I asked them to start it with, let's start with things that the board actually has tangible influence on. And then once we get through all those, if we have time for the, hey, did you know items, we'll get to them. You've had a chance to look at what we're going to talk about, in coming October. If you have any thoughts about anything else that you were missing, that you would like maybe to talk about a little bit in the board session, this agenda is truly up to us on what you want to talk about going forward. And I do think there is, though, 1 hour we have to give to the attorney for some board training. I think that's kind of mandated.
Right there, right at the top. I'm circling it.
Yeah, you got board 101.
Yep. Just some basics.
And then right now we plan on a whole day session, is that right? So,
Yeah, Madam Chair, and I'll actually, and Betty can weigh in as well. So splitting the days, this day would be dedicated to strategic planning policies and priorities for the board. And then the next day would be the board meeting. So keep those separate so you don't have the constraints of a time frame by trying to do them both in one day. If you get done early, you get more networking. If you get done later, you got more work done or more brainstorming done. Either way, you win.
okay, super. And then a dinner that night, and then, Catherine, if you want to go have the board, and generally we've toured airports
Yeah.
before, we've been to the winery before, it's just kind of whatever. You get set up.
I don't think the board's been to my airport in a very long time.
We
so I
have
would
not.
love to give you a tour and kind of show you what we're working on our advanced terminal study and our future plan to expand.
That was awesome. All right, well, cool. Kathy, do you need anything from us?
I will let you know what I'll need from you all,
What do you need from us?
because Kathy won't be here.
Yep.
and, as soon as I know, I'll let you know.
So quick thing, are we gonna go through board updates? Because I have a couple of items that I want to mention.
Yeah, just anything before we get that you need to get on with for the staff for the October session.
I need to know, anybody who hasn't let me know if they have a hotel need, for one or two of the nights. I've heard from some of you, so I'll ping those of you who I haven't heard from. And then, any more changes to the agenda for the strategic planning ideas that you want to make sure that
I'm
we
here,
cover?
I'm gonna close the agenda unless somebody speaks in the next 30 seconds, going once. Going twice, that's our agenda.
Okay, that is done. So that's gonna be fabulous. And then I'll work with Catherine on any other logistics or things that you want to add in terms of, the tours and things like that. So you will know what your day is gonna roll out like. And have a fantastic experience as a board together, and also it's kind of setting the tone for the future. And I'll turn to Betty for any additional input or direction on the planning meeting. Nope, I think it looks good. You're all good. All
Okay,
right,
so tell Kathy if you need a hotel, otherwise you're gonna be sleeping on the streets.
okay,
Okay,
gotcha. Okay, thank you. Okay,
all right. So Kenji, board updates.
Yeah, board updates. It's actually been very interesting couple of weeks in the UAS field. If you haven't heard, there was a lawsuit against the FAA on remote identification of drones. The appeal was just thrown out by the appeal was denied by the DC Circuit Court of Appeals. So remote identification of drones is on track. And then along those same lines, the FAA has provided information to ASTM that their MOC, their means of compliance, has been approved. It's just waiting publication in the Federal Register. So that is going on. And on another note, I was actually in Bentonville, Arkansas a couple of weeks ago. And I was able to watch the actual drone deliveries by Walmart, which is fairly interesting. So it is, they are seeing that on the agenda, Amazon Prime Air. They're starting to do some testing as well, but there are active deliveries going on. So it's a thing, and definitely good to have that on the agenda.
So you're breathing now that the world is no longer on your doorstep.
Yeah, so I will be doing a really brief overview for the Lane Act this evening at 5:30, just how it was being the main host airport for the World Athletics Championships. I can just tell you really briefly, it was amazing. And we had 50% more seats in our market this July than we had in July of 2019. So our airline partners really came through for us. We've been working with them since we knew we were getting the championships to add lift and upgauge equipment. And then it helped to gain 3 new airlines in 2021, including Southwest. So, and then the really remarkable thing I was telling Martha is they really protected our market. In July, the airlines were pretty much having a meltdown. They kind of still are. And, but it was noticeable in Eugene that we were not seeing cancellations or delays. I mean, maybe just kind of a more normal amount. So they were truly protecting our market to support that huge event in our community. So it's awesome. It was also really fun. We were like an international airport for several weeks there, and the teams would all come through. We think that almost all the teams came through our airport, which we were just so thrilled. And they would all come in their uniforms, and they all speak their languages, and we had language interpreters, and we had it was just really, we felt a lot more like our big brother up the road. So the arrivals were spread out, so it was a little more manageable. And we had, lots of shuttle support from the state and Lane Transit District. And then we also had athlete shuttles running separately. And And then the exodus, so we were a little worried about what was going to happen on the departure time frame, but we know some teams and athletes were leaving as they completed their events. So we're really thankful for that. That helps buffer things a bit. But boy, I'll tell you, the day after that event ended, our terminal building was just jam packed. You could not walk through the ticket counter area because all the lines and the bags just snaked all the way through it. And then up at the gates as well, just absolutely jam packed. So really fun experience. Really, we were very glad that everyone got on their way after that, because it maxed out everybody, the airlines and our staff and everything. But we would do it again because it was just a fabulous experience.
Super cool. Kenji.
I forgot one thing. The FAA had a listening session on the Beyond Vision Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee report. They had a few. The last one was a couple of weeks ago. And one thing I want to bring up was there was a lot of response to the proposed right-of-way rules in the Aviation Rulemaking Committee report, especially with UA getting priority under 400 feet, or actually 500 feet. If they're over non-cooperative aircraft, because there was a lot of feedback based on the lighter than air community, as well as the GA aircraft owners who can't have electrical systems on board. We've made a suggestion, that we as my organization and a few others, that the FAA allow low power, non-TSO ADS-B out on those aircraft to allow them to equip and become cooperative. So that might be a possibility in the future and something to keep track of.
Right. Anything from our brethren over PDX?
We have entered into probably some of the most complex part of our reconstruction project. And it will last essentially for the next 4.5 months till the end of the year, about 130 days in total. We've erected the entire roof that will go over the resilient roof that will go over the new terminal on an opposite side of the airport. And that will be broken into about a dozen sections, each one of them weighing over 1 million pounds, and transported over. There's 20 some individual columns that have to be placed in order to hold this roof in place, which is all going on right now. Those are all have pilings that go down the bedrock. All that work, all the below surface work was completed over the last year. So those columns are being placed right now. Each one of those is, well, it's 35 feet to the roof plus another, so they're about 50 feet tall. These giant mega columns. Those are all being placed, and then the roof erection will start here in the next few weeks. So each one of those will come over on a transport in the individual in the middle of the night, then be lifted up into place and then slid in on a cassette onto the tops of these columns.
It's gonna be cool to watch.
Yeah, it's highly impactful to the airlines, because we're closing gates, we're closing access points, we're closing security checkpoints.
Wow.
Some of these will be during the middle of the day, some of them will be starting in the late evening and going all the way through to the early morning. So like I said, we are entering the most impactful phase of it. When we're done with that, the roof will be in place, and all the construction of the new terminal facilities will go on underneath that. So yeah, we have faced a little more problem with our carriers with having problems with them being able to maintain their schedules. So that has been a little more impactful to our flight schedule, to passengers, kind of the way it is nationally right now.
You could send them my way.
Yeah.
Well, I say, yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
kind.
So otherwise, we're doing okay.
Right, big project though, it's impressive.
It is impressive.
It's
And at some
impressive.
point, next year to that point, when we have that roof erected, and we're working underneath it and constructing under at that point, we might want to host something up in Portland in the spring or something, and get the tour of that facility as it's under construction.
Schedule wise, when do you think passengers will?
Passengers will be able to move through that part. Well, there's a portion of it that will open for the vast majority of it will open for passenger processing at the end of 24. And then the areas that we're still using for passenger processing will then close. Well, not processing, for security processing. Those will close at the end of 24 for about another 14-month or so period until the end of 25 or early 26. And those get deconstructed and reconstructed the same way. So it will completely complete. It won't happen until 2026, but the vast majority of the new both ticketing, security processing, concessions, things, the major new field that will be at the end of 24.
Wow.
And we face the same price problems and pressures as well. Anything from, depending on some materials, 30% up to things like glass, up to like 60% increase.
Really on glass.
So, well, specialty type of features in glass, things like that. So yeah, materials and then just the timeline for having them delivered has been difficult.
Look forward to being when it's done.
Yeah.
So Tom, back from your vacation, is there any piece of Europe that you haven't seen yet? In the...
Saw most of it. Advise everybody to stay away from Amsterdam. Go for it. Yes.
All right. Well, cool. Well, that's all I have. And I was, one thing before we close at the strategic session, I would kind of like to see, we're missing a vice chair right now. Vince was the vice when he retired. So if you have any interest, give it some thought and maybe we could think about nominating someone for that position coming up during that strategic session if you want. So look forward to that, but staff, do you have any retakes, anything for the board? Okay, with that, then let me go ahead and close this session of the Oregon Aviation Board. And I know that we'll take a quick 5-minute break and then we've got an executive session that we need to call.
All right, hang on, I'm end the recording.